Okay, so imagine, you wake up one morning, bam, you're reincarnated as someone with the same name as you. But wait, you're now the concubine of the emperor's grandson. And no formal wedding. You were basically forced into the palace. After you're done venting about this absurdity, you find out this grandson is a tyrant who can't even read, let alone fight. Seriously, but wait, it gets worse. Turns out your former fiancé is using you to usurp the throne, and even the regent is interested in you. Talk about dramatic. So, being the selfless queen you are, you decide to endure and protect yourself. In this love triangle, you choose to educate the foolish emperor and help him regain power. You go, girl. Can she really help this emperor save the Great Qin Empire? The empire she and the previous emperor built with blood, sweat, and tears. Stay tuned, bestie. Inside the magnificent palace, a refreshing fragrance drifted through the air, accompanied by the crisp voice of a palace maid. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. The palace maid bowed respectfully and reported, Your Majesty, you instructed us to wake you up at the appointed time, and the time has come. The noble consort was startled awake by the call, frowning and slowly propping herself up. She sighed inwardly with a headache, but still maintained a dignified expression and commanded, Dress me. The palace maid continued to praise. Your Majesty is truly the most beautiful woman in the Great Qin. No other concubine in the harem can compare to you. This series of compliments made the noble consort notice this palace maid. This new palace maid sure knows how to talk. How old am I now? The most beautiful woman. Seeing that her mistress didn't respond, she took it as tacit approval and continued, Your Majesty is always like this, always dressing according to your own preferences. These words made the person who usually had no expression towards flattery pause for a few seconds. Always like this. It seemed she was indeed instructed beforehand. Although she admired herself every day, today, as this new palace maid dressed her, she was still a little shocked when she saw her reflection in the mirror. My God, this is... At that moment, she broke out in a cold sweat, staring at the unfamiliar person in the mirror. Who is this? Suddenly, a voice from behind interrupted her thoughts. Is Your Majesty still dreaming? You are Meng You, the eldest daughter of General Meng, His Majesty's noble consort. Why are you exclaiming, my God, like the Empress Dowager? The cries of Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager echoed in Meng Yu's mind. She clearly remembered that just a moment ago, her beloved grandson was kneeling on the ground, crying for her. She had guarded this empire for the previous emperor for many years and was truly exhausted. Before her was a blurry-faced man, and she kept calling out, Ayu, Ayu. Suddenly, she was startled awake by the continuous calls of the palace maids beside her, Your Majesty. Her personal maids couldn't help but exchange glances, communicating with their eyes. What's wrong with Your Majesty today? Meng You had to quickly fabricate a seemingly reasonable excuse. I've been in the deep palace for so long, I forgot what day it is for a moment. The palace maid replied without suspicion, Your Majesty, it is the 3rd year of Gungzi in the Great Qin dynasty, the 6th day of the 3rd month. She frowned and continued to ask, Where is Empress Dowager Jingzhuang? This time, the palace maid was truly puzzled and explained, Why is Your Majesty suddenly asking about the founding Empress Dowager? That was a very, very long time ago. Meng Yu's heart immediately sank, and she gritted her teeth, saying, So that means her illusions were shattered. My God, I'm now the concubine of my own great-great-great-grandson, and a noble consort. The truth was like a bolt from the blue, leaving Meng Yu unable to accept it for a moment. The two palace maids gossiped excitedly. To be honest, our emperor didn't inherit the excellent genes of the previous emperor and the Empress Dowager. You should learn some history in the palace. The emperor is actually not the biological descendant of the previous emperor and the Empress Dowager. Upon hearing this, Meng Yu clutched her chest and breathed a sigh of relief. Not my grandson. That's great. Unexpectedly, the palace maid indignantly held up a portrait of the emperor and pointed, saying, Whether blood-related or not doesn't matter. What matters is that His Majesty is indeed a tyrant, completely different from the wise ministers, indulging in pleasure, muddle-headed, and cruel. Every word extinguished the sliver of comfort Meng Yu had just felt. She was about to go mad with anger. The Great Qin that the previous emperor and I worked so hard to build is actually going to be passed down to such a descendant. Large beads of sweat rolled down her cheeks. Her willow brows furrowed into a tight line, and she gritted her teeth. And most importantly, he likes married women. Saying this, she had to force herself to calm down, Don't be angry, don't be angry. Seeing Meng Yu's anger, the palace maids beside her added fuel to the fire. Shameless, so shameless. He even forcibly takes the wives of officials. Meng Yu slammed her hand on the table in fury. She shouted 2 words, shameless. This startled the 2 palace maids, who immediately apologized. Your Highness, please forgive us. We dare not mention this again. Meng Yu felt everything was a mess, momentarily speechless, not knowing how to respond to the 2 palace maids. She thought the matter was finally over, but unexpectedly, the maids revealed another shocking piece of news. You are the Emperor's wife. Hearing this, she fainted in anger. The 2 personal maids hurriedly supported her, crying out in panic, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, are you all right? Your Majesty, please calm down. A few seconds later, Meng Yu abruptly sat up, about to exclaim heavens, but remembering her changed status, immediately corrected herself. This consort wants to see the Emperor. You don't need to follow. She thought carefully. If this grandson was truly as the maids described, then the empire she and the late emperor painstakingly built could not fall into his hands. Meng Yu walked for a long time, finally arriving at the magnificent hall of mental cultivation. The familiar sight before her couldn't help but remind her of her past life. Seeing her arrival, the eunuch guarding the door respectfully announced, Your Majesty, His Majesty is currently receiving court officials. Meng Yu looked at the cold vermilion gates. The sound of the emperor laughing and talking with his ministers drifted out. A personal expedition. Sounds quite interesting. Hearing this, she scoffed sarcastically. Oh, His Majesty is having a good time with the ministers. The eunuch, anticipating this, tried to stop her, only managing to shout, Your Majesty, you mustn't, before Meng Yu kicked open the doors, startling all the officials. The emperor twirled a riding crop between his slender fingers and said calmly, I am currently discussing matters with the court officials. Jeezy's seemingly indifferent tone sent a chill down everyone's spine. How dare the noble consort create such a commotion? But Meng Yu was not someone to be intimidated by a naive child, especially one who was, in fact, her great-grandson. She retorted confidently, It's about the personal expedition. This consort knows that Your Majesty is the Son of Heaven, but have you considered the implications of personally leading the troops, disregarding your own safety? Jeezy, faced with the consort's serious attitude, panicked slightly, unable to find the words to respond. Meng Yu simply smiled kindly, waiting for his reply. The emperor, clearly unable to come up with a more reasonable excuse, hurriedly shifted the blame to the minister standing below. The scenery outside is beautiful. The cattle and sheep have a unique flavor. The vassal states are full of beauties, and if we win, I can expand the harem. I think it's quite good. She gritted her teeth, her face darkening as she glared at the unfortunate minister, who looked as if he was about to cry. Your Majesty, the noble consort's gaze is terrifying. Meng Yu suppressed her anger and tried to calmly persuade the emperor. Leading troops in a battle is extremely dangerous. What are Your Majesty's martial arts skills like? Jeezy enthusiastically brandished his riding crop, confidently saying, I can hit whoever I want. As soon as he finished speaking, Meng Yu easily snatched the whip from his hand. The minister, seeing the emperor's whip, pointed at him, felt his breath catch in his throat. The emperor's enthusiasm was doused like a fire met with water, and he said dejectedly, I can't hit anything. Meng Yu continued to deflate his morale. Then what about Your Majesty's military strategy? He shamelessly blew a kiss into the air and replied, I have plenty of strategies when it comes to beautiful women. The consort's suppressed anger flared up again. Then what about experience in leading troops? The emperor, still not understanding, childishly replied, I once led my cricket team to victory against the eunuch's cricket team. And not only that, I was praised as being both literary and martial. Meng Yu decided to say no more. She pulled back the whip with her right hand, grabbed and tightened it with her left, as if drawing a bow. This grandson of mine, Jeezy, before he could react, he watched helplessly as his body was pulled forward and then gently thrown to the ground. The eunuchs beside the emperor were terrified, only daring to cry out twice. Your Majesty. He was on the verge of tears, desperately questioning Meng Yu. Are you crazy? How dare you? But she paid no attention to his empty words. Her hand gripped the riding crop tightly, each word squeezed through gritted teeth. You think you can lead troops like this? Dream on. How can my Great Qin fall into the hands of someone like you? Ignorant, foolish, absurd. The angrier Emperor Meng became, the harder she whipped. The sound of the whip cracking mixed with Jeezy's miserable cries. Are you all dead? Someone restrained this madwoman. Protect the Emperor. It was like shouting at the distant sea, a small pebble thrown into a lake causing no ripples. Only his pathetic cries remained in the hall. Ah, ah, ah. Just as he was about to be beaten half to death, he mustered his remaining strength and ordered the soldiers outside. Seize her. Lock her up in the cold palace immediately. Dozens of sharp swords instantly pointed at Meng You. Suddenly, Jeezy changed his mind. No, send her to the Zongren mansion. Only then did she panic, realizing she had acted too impulsively. Qilin's shriek echoed through the hall. It's terrible. His Majesty has fainted. Indeed, beaten and enraged, Jeezy foamed at the mouth and lost consciousness. A palace maid ran breathlessly to the pavilion where the imperial concubines were enjoying the cool air. Your ladyships, your ladyships. I just heard that imperial concubine Meng You flew into a rage in the hall of mental cultivation and struck his majesty. The three concubines, hearing this gossip, perked up their ears like cats smelling fish. Is that true? Before the palace maid could catch her breath, they huddled together, chattering nonstop. Remember when she was brought here? She was holding a shoe, ready to hit someone, one concubine said. Another chimed in. Even the tyrant didn't dare go near her. The third added, antagonizing the tyrant all day long. What good does it do to offend him? This time she dared to hit him, she'll definitely be sent to the cold palace. But within 5 seconds, they deflated like punctured balloons, complaining, oh, she's so lucky. I want to go to the cold palace too. Me too. That annoying tyrant. I don't want to serve him. Only consort Rome remained expressionless, her lips pursed, humming thoughtfully and frowning as she corrected the other three concubines. The cold palace is too lenient for her. For such a crime, she should be imprisoned in the Zongren mansion. Outside the palace, the sky was clear and the breeze gentle, but Meng You had no mind to appreciate the beautiful scenery. Imprisoned in the Zongren mansion, she was paying the price for her impulsiveness. Only after striking him did she realize that she was no longer the Empress Dowager, and the boy she had hit would probably not let her leave the Zongren mansion alive. Suddenly, someone came to Meng Yu's cell and called her affectionately, "You." Her beautiful eyes widened at the sound. She didn't speak, only looked outwards, scrutinizing the newcomer. Who was this man who addressed her so intimately? What was their previous relationship? Before she could react, the other person bombarded her with reproachful questions. Before you entered the palace, didn't you promise me that you would endure no matter what and not clash with the tyrant? If you continue like this, how will we ever reunite? Meng You understood. Could this be the Xie whom the palace maid spoke of, the one who lost his fiancée? But judging by his tone, there seemed to be more to this abduction than met the eye. She decided to take the initiative and gradually clarify the situation. She immediately retorted, "Do you really want to reunite with me? Then when will that be?" Xie was startled by Meng Yu's sudden question. Gripping the cell bars, he explained, "You give me some time. The Great Qin has had generations of wise rulers and deep roots. It cannot be easily shaken. But I promise, I won't make you wait too long." His words stung her, rekindling the suppressed anger she felt towards Jeezy. Her fists clenched, trembling with rage. As an ancestor who pioneered and developed the Great Qin, she now had to listen to this small fry talk about destroying this foundation. She wished she could stab him multiple times. This Xie actually wanted to destroy the foundation of the Great Qin, the legacy of the Great Qin ancestors. Meng You narrowed her eyes, thinking, scheming conspirators like you, how can you talk about love? Women are nothing but pawns in your eyes. Xie didn't notice the change in her expression and reached out recklessly, wanting to touch her. "Hey you, don't ignore me." She couldn't help but worry. Was this foolish Meng You being used by him, deliberately approaching the emperor to fulfill his conspiracy? Thinking of this, she coldly brushed his hand away. "I've thought a lot in the Zongren mansion. That tyrant wants my beauty. You must have been instigating him behind the scenes, haven't you?" Xiejin looked as if his thoughts had been exposed. He swallowed back the tears that were about to spill. Meng You pressed her advantage. Did you deliberately send me into the palace, wanting to use me to accomplish your plot? Unexpectedly, he refused to admit defeat. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably as he choked out an explanation, trying to regain her trust. Everything I do is to be with you. I didn't expect you to doubt me like this. Watching him cry, Meng You couldn't help but curse inwardly. Isn't this manipulative crybaby act a bit much? The late emperor didn't shed a single tear when pierced by swords and spears, and this guy starts crying after I say a single word. She decided to change her tactics, extending her sleeve to wipe his face and hastily apologizing. I was impulsive just now. I shouldn't have said those things. After coaxing him to stop crying, she sighed, resting her forehead on her hand, her eyes filled with a sorrowful understanding. But I've already hit the emperor. I'm afraid I won't make it out of the Zonran mansion alive. Hearing this, Xiejin confidently comforted her. Your father is coming soon. Even if that tyrant wants to make things difficult for you, Lord Lin will intercede. Lord Lin is the tyrant's teacher and even save his life during the border unrest. The tyrant will definitely listen to him. You'll be fine. Meng You, having received the information she wanted, waved him away. Hearing you say that, I'm relieved. You can't stay here too long. Go quickly. Realizing her words sounded heartless, she awkwardly added, I mean, be careful with your work, then forced a smile to hide her embarrassment. Fortunately, he just smiled and replied, Don't worry, not seeming to mind. Only after leaving did Xiejin mutter to himself suspiciously, Is it my imagination? Something seems off about her. Meanwhile, Meng You lay on the prepared straw pile, planning her next move. Without that useless grandson, and with a new emperor, the Great Qin will fall sooner or later. After I get out of the Zonran mansion, I need to see if there are any suitable candidates for emperor among the royal family. But she immediately dismissed the thought. No, first I need to figure out the original host's complicated relationships. How many factions are there in the court right now? As she was resting, a eunuch respectfully reported, Your Majesty, Lord Lin has been persuading His Majesty for over an hour, and he has agreed to let you out. Meng You thought. It seems Xiejin was right. It wasn't until she walked out that the eunuch finished. However, His Majesty said you must apologize to him. Meng Yu's expression immediately darkened, and she repeated with a strange smile, Oh, apologize, is it? She arrived once again at the magnificent hall of mental cultivation. This time, GZ was high and mighty, asking, Concubine, do you know your mistake? He finished speaking and smiled smugly. Good, I have the upper hand. Who knew Meng You would retort? What mistake have I made? Each of Meng Yu's words reached GZ's ears. You, who snatched a minister's wife, are the one who has done something absurd. Do you know your mistake? After hearing these words, he froze, as if saying, Huh. Then, as if he didn't care, he became arrogant again. I am the emperor. I can do whatever I want. Everyone under heaven should bow to me, including you. Even though the eunuchs beside him desperately tried to stop him, they couldn't prevent GZ from pointing at Meng Yu's face. Her face darkened like the bottom of a pot, and she couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Is this kid still in his rebellious phase? Wouldn't it be faster to just kill him and replace him with a new emperor? Seeing him stumble, the eunuchs quickly supported him, worriedly asking, Your Majesty, are your injuries not yet healed? But how could such a thick-skinned person admit it? He stubbornly replied, I don't need your help. Then he quickly pulled her into his arms, one hand tightly around her waist, the other lifting her chin, bringing his face close and whispering, You should also bow to me. Meng You clenched her fists, gritting her teeth. This little brat, finally unable to bear it any longer, she delivered a thunderous punch to GZ's face. How dare you act so presumptuously with your ancestor? He went flying, adding a 2-0 score to her fist record. Even as he fell to the ground, Meng You continued to whip his deserving backside. GZ, unable to sit or flee, could only lie on the ground groaning for help. He angrily swore, Meng You, one day I will make you willingly submit to me. She scoffed disdainfully, a man who can't even dodge my whip. Who knew he would stop cursing, his cheeks flushing instead, as if embarrassed. So what if he can wield a sword? Seeing his reaction, Meng Yu's anger subsided a little. This guy actually seems ashamed. He reached out and clenched his fist, but still needed someone to help him up. Then he clenched his fist tightly and declared loudly, Crushing you is as easy as crushing an ant. It's only because I'm still injured. When I recover, I'll make you look at me with new eyes. Hearing his petty thoughts, Meng You had a different idea. I didn't expect this tyrant to know shame. She thoughtfully touched her chin. It's rare for him to be so shy. Of course, I should take this opportunity to control him and make him obedient. She took the opportunity to provoke him. Then I'll wait and see when your majesty can defeat this weak woman. The somewhat cheerful atmosphere changed again because of the eunuch's announcement from outside. The regent has arrived. Hearing this, GZ's attitude was no longer frivolous, and Meng You was also puzzled. How can our Great Qin have a regent, a role that seizes power? But before she could figure it out, the emperor pushed her behind the curtain. Hide in the inner chamber and don't come out. She could only ask blankly why. She received a short reply. I hate him. Despite the warning, her curious nature still made her peek out to eavesdrop. I have to hear who this regent is. Ji Swan came under the pretense of checking on the emperor, but his true intention was to probe the rumors. I heard that your majesty was injured. I came to visit. Are you feeling better? Meng You dared not underestimate this man. The regent held himself with more imperial bearing than the tyrant. GZ languidly replied, Imperial uncle, I'm fine. Ji Swan narrowed his eyes, a flicker of contempt in his gaze as he looked down coldly, and said, Does your majesty intend to lead the troops personally? GZ rubbed his backside, avoiding Ji Swan's gaze. Although I promised Imperial uncle I'd be a real man, I can't even sit properly right now, let alone ride a horse. I'm afraid it's out of the question this time. Ji Swan's hand stroked the hilt of his sword. GZ waited for the verdict. After a moment of hesitation, Ji Swan bowed respectfully. In that case, your majesty should rest well. I shall take my leave. Hidden behind the screen, Meng You saw through everything. The regent had suggested the personal expedition, hoping to use the opportunity to eliminate the tyrant and seize the throne, and this boy was completely oblivious. Her eyes were filled with worry. This grandson had been raised to be so useless. It was truly a headache. If the regent became emperor, at least the Qin dynasty wouldn't fall. As she pondered, GZ entered with a grin. Seeing your old flame, your childhood sweetheart, you're rather calm. Back then, he delayed marrying you for the throne, so you married Jingjia. In the end, he gained neither the throne nor his wife and army. What a waste. Meng You felt her blood boil, wanting to shout. Did Meng Yu's story get plagiarized from Yao Fei's script? But she forced herself to remain calm and probed. It seems your majesty doesn't respect your imperial uncle. Did you capture me to spite him? A mocking smile played on GZ's lips. He chuckled, appraising Meng You. You're acting strange today. Her face darkened. His expression confirmed her suspicions. Preoccupied, she left the palace. She had initially thought this grandson was useless. Could this be his way of venting after losing his military power? It seemed she needed to delve into the history books and understand the current state of the Qin dynasty. Suddenly, she stopped. Ji Swan emerged from behind the rock garden, stating with certainty, You were just in the Yangxin palace, weren't you? Then, with a hint of regret and affection, he called out, Xiao Yu. Ji Swan's voice was laced with both reproach and intimacy. I finally tricked the emperor into leading the expedition. If you hadn't hit him, he would have died on the battlefield, and the throne would have been mine. We could have been together. Anger flared within Meng You again. This was the third time today. Why did the Ji imperial clan have this penchant for stealing other people's spouses? However, weighing the pros and cons, she thought this regent wasn't so bad. Meng You spoke. If the tyrant leads the expedition, he will surely command personally. Aren't you worried about losing the border, Your Highness? Ji Swan smiled calculatingly. Our ancestors conquered too much of Qi territory during the northern expedition, leading to constant warfare. Once I ascend the throne, I will return those lands to Qi. They will surely be grateful and withdraw their troops voluntarily. Meng You frowned. This man actually intended to give away land for free. As one of those ancestors, she couldn't stand for it. Meng You stated firmly, Even if I were to leave the emperor, I would never follow you. Our aspirations and paths are different. With that, she turned and left without a second glance, leaving Ji Swan standing there, watching her retreating figure. He reached out, as if trying to hold on to the last vestiges of warmth, softly murmuring, Xiao Yu, Xiao Yu. He stared blankly at his ignored hand, falling silent. A palace maid broke the silence, entering with a stack of books. Your Highness, the history of the Qin dynasty you requested has arrived. Meng You hurriedly took the books and began to read. The books detailed. Emperor Shi was diligent and cared for his people in his early years, But as he aged and feared death, he turned to alchemy, his temperament becoming increasingly erratic and unpredictable. Under his paranoia and imperial machinations, his 9 sons slaughtered each other, vying for the position of crown prince. By the time the late emperor passed away, only the 16th prince, the current tyrant, remained. GZ and Meng You closed the book, their minds filled with a myriad of thoughts, sighing inwardly. It turned out the tyrant was the prince who hadn't participated in the fight for the throne, surviving by sheer luck and later ascending with the help of the regent. She rubbed her temples tiredly, muttering to herself, "This guy's reign is purely based on luck. No wonder he has the air of a nouveau riche." Suddenly, she pointed at the portrait in a daze. "GZ, he's not related to you at all, right?" Just as she finished reading, a palace maid excitedly reported, "Knowing that His Highness has left the ancestral hall, Consort Rong invites you to play cards." Compared to the palace maid's excitement, Meng You was stunned for a few seconds. Play cards. She quickly regained her imposing aura. The harem isn't such a harmonious place. I think they're here to watch the show. They want to play palace intrigue, huh? The air outside was quite fresh at that moment, enough to soothe the anger that had flared up earlier. The flattery of the 3 concubines made Meng You feel elated. One of the noble consorts held her hand and whispered, "Did your hand hurt when you whipped the tyrant's thick-skinned hide?" Not to be outdone, the other 2 also asked, "Did you suffer in the ancestral hall? Your face has thinned and your hair is dry. Don't let the tyrant anger you to death. Come, have some tea. I warmed on the way here. It's just the right temperature." Their exaggerated performance made Meng You doubt her judgment. Was the atmosphere in the harem a bit off? Or rather, she hadn't transmigrated into a noble consort, but into an emperor with a harem. Watching the 3 concubines chatting happily, she seemed to see a glimmer of hope. Such beautiful and lovely concubines would surely give birth to intelligent princes. If the tyrant is useless, I'll raise them into wise rulers. Acting on the thought, Meng You immediately said, "The tyrant isn't good at much, but he's quite handsome." If the princes, before she could finish, the 3 indignantly interrupted her, "There's no intimacy, so where would princes come from? Don't worry, we'll make sure he has no descendants. Him touching even a finger of ours will be disrespectful to you." Hearing these words, Meng You felt her eyes moisten. Didn't this mean she wouldn't have a chance to raise little princes? She coughed a few times and casually inquired, "You all know I entered the palace because I didn't like the emperor's face, so why do you all hate the tyrant so much?" As soon as she said this, she felt the surroundings scorched by the anger emanating from the 3 noble consorts, leaving her puzzled, wondering if she had asked the wrong question. The first concubine indignantly recounted, "The first time I was chosen to attend to him was on a night with a full moon. As soon as the emperor entered, he pulled out a piece of yellow cloth, leaving me bewildered. The next second, he said, 'So ugly, cover your face quickly, don't defile my eyes.' These words hurt my heart, a recognized beauty, and I couldn't help but cry. Thinking it was over, I didn't expect the emperor to immediately fly into a rage and drive me out, adding, 'ugly' and a crybaby. If you slept beside me, I'd definitely have nightmares. Since then, the sight of him makes me want to vomit." Meng You sighed helplessly after hearing this. The next guest wasn't much better off either. I come from a prestigious family and received a strict upbringing. One day, the tyrant suddenly summoned me. He excitedly took out a red dancing dress, making me blush. Then he insisted I wear it for him. For a lady of noble birth, this was unacceptable. So I roared, "You might as well kill me." I desperately refused, ready to bash my head in. He was afraid of causing a death, so he drove me out of the Qin palace, and I narrowly escaped. The last concubine shrugged, her face full of confusion as she voiced her thoughts. "So my sisters and I have always wondered, Consort Rong isn't blind, so why is she still so infatuated with the tyrant, even wanting to bear his children?" Meng Yu's eyes lit up, as if she had found a glimmer of hope. Consort Rong. Just as they were chatting animatedly, a palace maid rushed in, panicked. Your Highness, the Empress Dowager summons you." She wondered why the Empress Dowager was looking for her at this time. When she arrived, she saw the scheming consort Rong kneeling and offering tea, a smug look on her face. The Empress Dowager sternly rebuked. Meng You, you harmed His Majesty's dragon body. Do you know your crime? Having just dealt with the 3 concubines and not having rested, she felt exhausted being summoned by the Empress Dowager. But since she was here, she had to find a way to deal with it. She was the regent's adoptive mother, and the tyrant saw her as a grandmother. It seemed she was here to cause trouble. In terms of seniority, I'm her ancestor's ancestor's ancestor. She wants me to kneel. Dream on. A moment later, Meng You revealed a sly smile. Judging by her cheerful expression, she must have thought of a countermeasure. She immediately put on a pitiful look, blushing as she replied, "This servant wouldn't dare lay a hand on His Majesty. It's just that His Majesty has particular preferences in the bedchamber. This servant had no choice but to comply. Otherwise, with His Majesty's temper, it wouldn't have just been a one-day confinement." The Empress Dowager and consort Roan blushed, covering their mouths with their hands. The Grand Empress Dowager coughed twice. "All right, enough with the nonsense." Finally, the Empress Dowager decreed, "Today, I strip you of your authority to manage the harem. Consort Roan will take charge." As soon as the words left her mouth, Consort Roan's lips curled into a sinister smile. She glanced contemptuously at Meng You and then respectfully knelt to offer a salute. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Meng You had to look at her in a new light. So this was the real purpose of summoning her. The matter inside wasn't over yet, but GZ, he was already throwing a tantrum outside the hall. The eunuchs hurriedly tried to stop him. "Your Majesty, you can't go in." But they couldn't hold him back. "Get out of my way. I'm here for my noble consort." Upon entering the hall, GZ, he went straight to Meng Yu's side, gently helping her up. "Are you all right?" She shook her head and replied, "I'm fine." Then, playing the part of the domineering rescuer, she added, "Empress Dowager, if there's nothing else, this official will take the noble consort back." Then, feigning weakness, "Oh, my legs are numb from kneeling." This act infuriated the Empress Dowager to the point of wanting to hit someone, but she couldn't reach them. She could only glare at the affectionate pair and scold, "Can the two of you be apart for even a moment?" As they walked, GZ, he proudly recounted his heroic deeds. "You hit me, but I still barged into Sinang Palace to save you. Aren't you touched?" Unbeknownst to him, after his grand declaration, she retorted resentfully, "Your Majesty arrived too late. The Empress Dowager had already punished me. Your arrival only served to displease her further. Now she dislikes me even more." The Emperor was dumbfounded, thinking, women are so hard to understand. She wasn't finished. She even brought up the topic of having children. "Fine, you angered the Empress Dowager, but why did Your Majesty insult all the concubines? Now none of them are willing to serve you in the bedchamber, and you still have no heir." GZ laughed. "You're my noble consort, not my mother. Why do you worry about my children all the time?" He suddenly grabbed her wrist, whispering intimately, "If the noble consort is so concerned, why don't you give me one?" He pulled her into his embrace, murmuring sweet nothings. Meng You sighed helplessly. "Give a rest. The entire harem looks down on you acting like a grandson, let alone liking you." "I don't like you either." She immediately twisted his arm behind his back, making him scream like a stuck pig. Punishment complete, she immediately waved goodbye, offering a kind reminder before leaving. "Next time Your Majesty wants to get touchy-feely with this official, you'd better protect yourself first." This official takes her leave. She left GZ, he in tears, surrounded by a group of useless eunuchs. Back in her own palace, the eunuch was eagerly awaiting her return. Seeing her figure from afar, he hurried out and bowed respectfully. "Your ladyship has returned." Meng You hesitated and asked, "Is that Shun Ji he?" The eunuch replied. He looked up at her before finishing his sentence. "You always worry about me like this." He didn't answer her question, but gently led her into the bedchamber to rest. Meng You dined leisurely while Shun Jili stood respectfully by her side. "Please have some tea, Your Ladyship." The teacup was neatly placed beside her hand. She sipped her tea, observing him from the corner of her eye, while instructing the palace maids to clear the dishes. This was Jili. His appearance was so similar to Jin Yushi. It was hard to believe Meng You would keep someone who looked like her fiancé by her side. Gently placing the teacup back on the saucer, she asked him, "Do you remember why you're by my side?" Shinjili lowered his eyes and respectfully replied, "This servant certainly remembers." At the time, Jili was being bullied by an old eunuch, punched and kicked, cursed at, I'll beat this slave to death." He was knocked to the ground, his body numb and unable to resist, the light gone from his eyes. Just then, Meng You appeared like a ray of sunshine, pulling him out of the darkness. She scolded the eunuchs, "You dogs, what are you doing?" "My lady, like an angel, saved Geely. You reached out and helped me up, saying you needed someone to attend to you, and I've followed you ever since." Geely grew up in the barracks. I'll never forget Her Highness's valiant figure that day. A silence fell over the room when he finished reminiscing. Meng You glanced at his hand, holding the chess box. She speculated with a hint of suspicion. The calluses on the base of his palms are clearly those of a martial artist, not someone who would be bullied by an old eunuch. He seemed oblivious to her gaze and turned to ask, "Did Her Highness wish to play chess today?" "Help me change first," she commanded, rising decisively. She continued to ponder. Everyone says he resembles Ji Zishi. Does he not realize it himself? Could Geely be intentionally approaching me? Meanwhile, the atmosphere in Ji Zishi's palace was far from lively. His personal eunuch was massaging him. Exhaustion evident on his face, the eunuch asked, "Your Majesty, are you feeling better?" Just then, two other eunuchs entered to announce, "Consort Rong has prepared wine and dishes and invites your Majesty to join her." Ji Zishi hurriedly sat up and straightened his clothes. He suddenly flung a pillow at them in a fit of rage. "Get out," he roared. "My injuries haven't healed yet. What's this about drinking? What are you all planning?" The two eunuchs didn't dare hesitate. Yes, your servants will take their leave." Even the eunuch attending him spoke up. "Consort Rong is so gentle and considerate today, accommodating your Majesty in every way. Why do you always favor that arrogant noble consort?" The emperor glared at him, suspecting he'd been bribed by Consort Rong. But at the mention of Meng You, he blushed and coughed. "Ahem, it's just that I usually spoil the noble consort too much, which is why she's so willful with me." Ji Zishi's words made the eunuch's face darken. "Your Majesty calls that willful." He hurried out to give orders. "I'm going to see Meng You tonight." The eunuch sighed, explaining, "The Grand Empress Dowager just punished the noble consort with confinement. Wouldn't your Majesty's visit be a slap in the Grand Empress Dowager's face?" He had to chase after the emperor with a lantern in hand, even as the emperor ignored his attempts to stop him. Instead, he declared self-righteously, "I am the emperor. I do as I please. Who dares to stop me? The moon is so bright tonight, and the breeze is cool. It would be a shame not to enjoy it with company." Upon arriving, he saw Meng You playing chess with a eunuch and couldn't help but interrupt. The noble consort seems to be in good spirits. Shinjili immediately put down the chess piece and bowed respectfully. A fierce glint flashed in Ji Zishi's eyes, and he sternly ordered everyone to withdraw. Once they were gone, he resumed his infuriating demeanor. "I want you to keep me company tonight." Meng You hadn't expected him to dare come. She began cracking her knuckles, a smile on her face, but a chill in her voice. "Very well, but I'm afraid your Majesty won't have the good fortune to enjoy it." Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. Even if my grandson is useless, he's still better than this treacherous villain. Her last remark left Ji Zishi completely baffled. He asked in anguish, "No good fortune to enjoy it." He then collapsed onto the floor, helplessly. "Am I truly inferior to Jin Xing?" Meng You sat down calmly and replied earnestly, "Your Majesty is the supreme emperor. How can Jin Xing compare to you?" Hearing this, his previous worries vanished instantly. He quickly moved closer to her and whispered, "Last time I only mentioned Jin Xing once, and you rolled up your sleeves and kicked me out of Shufang Palace. Why are you so calm today?" He lifted her chin and whispered, "Have you finally realized that I'm more handsome and dashing than Jin Xing and fallen in love with me?" This time, Meng You surprisingly held back. After he finished speaking, she twisted his arm, her face darkening. "It seems your Majesty needs a lesson." Suddenly, her eyes widened in surprise. The wind had blown open the bedchamber doors, exposing the scene inside to the eunuchs guarding outside. Ji Zishi could only laugh awkwardly to smooth things over. "Ah, the moon is truly beautiful tonight." The eunuchs couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for their emperor, silently shedding tears of pity. Feeling his pride wounded, Ji Zishi rubbed his wrist and put on a show of authority. "I was just letting you in during the day. Tonight, I must reassert my marital authority. Meng You had been waiting for these words. She immediately drew out her whip and declared, just what I wanted. She realized he was clearly at a disadvantage tonight. We'll compete with strategy tonight. Holding a chess piece, a sly smile playing on his lips, he set the terms. If I win, the noble consort will spend the night with me. Do you dare? Meng You held a chess piece between her fingers, smiling confidently as she countered. If I win, you'll spend the night with me. He was brimming with confidence. Do you dare to gamble, Meng? Meng You immediately picked up the remaining chess pieces and countered. If I win, your majesty must mend your ways and become a good emperor. A hopeful gleam shone in her eyes. Do you dare to gamble? Jeezy was a little perplexed. After defeating me, she suddenly cares about state affairs and wants me to be a good emperor. Did she take the wrong medicine? Although he wasn't skilled in literary or martial arts, he had never lost a game of chess. He confidently placed a piece and provoked, "Don't regret it if you lose, concubine." But during the actual game, Meng You discovered he wasn't as useless as the rumors suggested. The chessboard is like a battlefield. Aside from the late emperor, I've never lost to anyone, but I didn't expect this brat's chess skills to be on par with mine. Jeezy was equally surprised. He hadn't expected the concubine to be so skilled at chess, in addition to her martial arts. After a long while, he slumped dejectedly on the table, thinking, why did I lose? She won so beautifully. Does this naive kid think he can beat his ancestor? She cheerfully reminded him, Your Majesty, remember your promise. From now on, you must be a good emperor. Jeezy thought sadly, what kind of good emperor do you want me to be? At this moment, her attitude immediately turned serious. She said in a low voice, take back the military power, win over the court officials, reclaim the tiger tally, eliminate the treacherous ministers, and earn the admiration of the people. Long live the emperor 10,000 years. Rule with virtue, conquer with strength, and bring peace to the world. Every word she spoke was etched into his heart. Jeezy's eyes widened in surprise. I didn't expect you to understand these things. At this moment, Jeezy was like an eagle with clipped wings, trapped in an iron cage. He confessed earnestly, I want to, but I'm just a puppet. Death is only a matter of time. I can't do anything. Meng You pushed herself up and stood, giving him no chance to refuse. Your Majesty lost to me just now because you are always hesitant and indecisive. She pointed coldly towards the door. If your Majesty wants to die shamefully before your ancestors, you can leave now. Her concern made him suspicious. You're so thoughtful. What do you want in return? Just as she thought he was finally getting serious, he blushed, flirted, and took off his outer robe as if trying to seduce her. I have nothing but this face. If you're interested in my looks, you don't have to wait. You can have it now. Meng You immediately drew her whip, wanting to tear him to shreds. This brat's skin is itching again. The weapon diminished his arrogance, and he quickly denied, just kidding, it's not itching, no need to hit me. Remembering something, she lowered her eyes sadly and expressed her wish. May the people live and work in peace and contentment. May the country prosper and enjoy stability. May the Great Qin dynasty flourish, and may your Majesty be a wise ruler rarely seen throughout history. Meng You secretly reveled, wow, I'm so noble. He decided to break free from his self-imposed confinement, filled with fighting spirit. Dying early or late is all the same. Since Concubine has such aspirations, I'll risk it all and try my best to fulfill your wish. She was also full of confidence in him. With old Brother Lin's guidance, he shouldn't be too bad. I'm quite confident. He recognizes quite a few characters, so he shouldn't be completely hopeless, right? But upon hearing this, the confidence she had just built up instantly vanished. Meng You deliberately asked, what did your Majesty just say? I didn't hear clearly. He, however, blushed crimson with embarrassment. He stammered, I said I recognize a few characters. She froze. He can be emperor just by recognizing a few characters. The Great Qin dynasty is doomed. But she could only hold onto a sliver of hope and ask, then what books has your Majesty read? Jeezy rubbed his hands, feigning a pitiful appearance to lessen the burden. When I was the crown prince, I was not favored. My brothers were all ruthless. To avoid getting caught up in the power struggle, I didn't study properly at all. Even Meng You had to make excuses for him. Playing dumb to save his life, I can understand that. But the fool acted innocently and whined. After ascending the throne, although old Brother Lin taught me diligently, the regent's spies were everywhere, and I couldn't continue my studies. Meng Yu's suppressed heart couldn't help but tremble. Others play dumb to hide their incompetence. But this guy is genuinely stupid. He has no incompetence to hide. He tilted his head, looking at the scenery outside the window, and confided in her. The harder I try, the faster I die. Being a useless emperor actually allows me to live more comfortably. With that, he turned his head and looked directly into her eyes, advising, if Concubine thinks I'm useless, it's not too late to regret it now. Meng You no longer felt disgusted. Her heart was filled with determination, and she said frankly, Your Majesty is a piece of wood, and I will be a skilled craftsman. Therefore, I am willing to assist Your Majesty in creating a prosperous and flourishing era. With that, she bowed respectfully, sighing inwardly, I have no choice. This was the first time anyone had completely trusted him, and Jeezy was so moved that he stammered you. He looked at the chess pieces scattered from the table to the floor and began to reminisce. I used to spend my time playing chess in the imperial study, and even the regent was no match for me. I usually let him win on purpose, just to deceive him. But today I lost completely. I am willing to trust noble consort Meng. Meng You quickly laid out a plan for Jeezy, and he didn't resist. From now on, someone is watching Your Majesty. Please come to me to study. All right, Your Majesty is weak. Continue to feign ignorance. It's getting late. Your Majesty, please go back and rest. All right. As soon as he finished speaking, he realized he had been tricked and immediately protested. No way. I came to dote on you. It's too much to kick me out in the middle of the night. Then he put on a seductive expression and pleaded in a low voice. I want to stay the night, Meng You. Meng You pretended to wink charmingly and whispered, Your Majesty, may I stay the night? Meng You cracked her knuckles, wishing she could punch him. This guy really. Jeezy suddenly felt his life was threatened and instantly rolled off the bed onto the floor. Then he stammered an explanation. Could the noble consort allow me to stay for the night? Seeing the murderous look on her face, he blurted out in a panic. I can sleep on the floor. Hearing this, Meng You finally stopped. She called for Shun Jili and ordered, lay a blanket on the floor. His Majesty will sleep there tonight. Jeezy was shocked. She was serious. He yelled, You heartless woman. Shun Jili quickly spread a blanket on the floor. Jeezy was impressed by his speed. Then she hummed a tune, pretending to explain to him, You said you wanted to sleep on the floor. I injure my waist and can only sleep on a hard surface, not a soft bed. He tossed and turned on the floor, staring at the ceiling, thinking, this is the first time I've spent the night in Shufeng Palace. The more he thought about it, the more aggrieved he felt, and tears almost welled up. But the floor was cold and hard, and he couldn't sleep at all. He looked at Meng Yu's slender figure on the bed and sighed. This woman is so petite. Where does she get the strength to beat me so badly? Suddenly, Jeezy felt his body heat up slightly and unconsciously swallowed. Just then, Meng You kicked her leg, revealing her foot, and the slight sound still caught his attention. That alluring glimpse made him unable to resist looking at it for a while longer. This woman is usually so fierce, but she's quite cute when she's sleeping peacefully. He stared at her fair neck and blurted out, but she's cute even when she's fierce. A scene that shouldn't have happened suddenly became strangely harmonious. He smiled, appreciating the sight of the sleeping beauty, only to be kicked out of the room a few seconds later by Meng You, flying out with a bloody nose. He screamed, ouch. She angrily questioned, were you trying to climb into my bed while I was asleep, Your Majesty? His nose bleeding, he covered his swollen cheek and replied aggrievedly, I didn't mean that. I just wanted to see if you were asleep, wanted to talk to you, and ended up getting beaten. You've definitely ruined my face. Meng You frowned tiredly and explained, it's just a reflex. Everyone who practices martial arts is like this. Then she reached out and touched his face, whispering, let me see. This action caught him off guard, and his whole body stiffened. She turned his head from side to side, anxiously saying, Your Majesty's face is important. It can't be injured. Completely oblivious to the fact that the Emperor's face was flushed crimson from her proximity. Then the shameless fellow said, I know you're coveting my beauty. Ignoring his vehement denial, I have no interest in you, Your Majesty. You are the Emperor. Your face cannot be injured. If people knew I hit you, it would be troublesome. Hearing this, he was furious but couldn't blame her. This woman you. The next day, as soon as the sun peaked over the horizon, he got up and prepared himself. Jean Geely, dressed in a magnificent blue court robe, stood below the dragon throne, a high-ranking official respectfully standing beside him, reporting to His Majesty. He was about to continue his report when he noticed the scratch on Jeezy's face and cried out in alarm. "Your Majesty, your face." Jizi could only feign ignorance and reply, "I was in such a hurry to see you all today that I ran too fast and fell." The official, recalling the rumors of the emperor being beaten last night, thought to himself, "The sun has risen from the west. This tyrant was actually in such a hurry to see us. It's obvious he was beaten by the noble consort last night." Recalling this month's impeachment, he decided to risk it all. This humble official impeaches noble consort Meng You, daughter of the Grand General, for her audacity in harming the emperor. She must be punished. Jean Geely and Jizi exclaimed in unison, "Audacious. That muddle-headed old fool slandered my beloved consort. That's why I was angry." Jizi retorted. The official kowtowed repeatedly in fear. "Your Majesty, please calm down." Jizi then turned to Ji Shuang. "Why does little imperial uncle seem even more concerned about her than I am?" The officials below, seeing Jizi daring to confront Ji Shuang, perked up, ready for a good show. The tyrant always listens to the regent. Now he's provoking him in front of everyone. Ji Shuang sneered, "Is that so? Your consort?" "I'd say consort Meng was forcibly taken by His Majesty." Jizi was unusually bold today, replying directly, "So what if I took her by force? She's mine now." Ji Shuang wasn't one to be trifled with, challenging him directly. "Whoever can take her, she belongs to them. In that case, Your Majesty should be careful." Although he bowed respectfully, his ambition was clear. "Perhaps consort Meng will still be consort Meng, but Your Majesty will no longer be His Majesty." Jizi frowned, staring directly into Ji Shuang's eyes. But he remained silent. After the court session ended, the officials were still discussing the previous confrontation. The tyrant and the regent were at daggers drawn just now. "I was scared stiff." The person next to him replied, "Who wasn't?" The official sighed. "I didn't expect the tyrant to dare provoke the regent." Another equally sweaty official responded. "Ever since he failed to persuade His Majesty to personally lead the troops, the regent has become increasingly arrogant, and none of the civil and military officials dare to speak out." Suddenly, the two realized something, exchanging surprised glances and saying in unison, "It's all because the emperor is going hunting. His Majesty doesn't want to be a puppet emperor, and the regent can't control him anymore." As soon as the court session ended, Jizi hurried back to Shufang Palace, proudly showing off his accomplishment of the day. "I lectured the censor like that in court. From now on, the officials definitely won't dare gossip about me anymore." Meng You opened the memorial and scanned it briefly for no more than a few seconds. She slammed it shut and tossed it on the table, then asked, "How is Your Majesty preparing for the hunt?" Speaking of this, he couldn't help but shiver, blushing with shame. But he quickly regained his confident demeanor, replying, "What's there to prepare? Every year, the officials prepare the prey for me. I just shoot a few arrows." Meng You could already imagine him looking smug in front of some insignificant prey. She immediately voiced her guess, "And the prey they bring Your Majesty are just pheasants and rabbits." She could also imagine him looking enviously at the regent's trophies. She directly provoked him, while in front of Ji Shuang, "It's all deer, elk, and large wolves." Being a foil to the regent is one thing, but behind his back, they say Your Majesty can't even hit a pheasant. Mocked like this, he also felt embarrassed. Who knew that in the next second, he would reply shamelessly, "People aren't born knowing how to ride and hunt. If I haven't learned, naturally I won't know how." Meng You had to resort to her trump card. "Your Majesty can just take me with you on the hunt." Hearing this, he replied excitedly, "Are you going to prepare tigers and leopards for me to hunt?" Hearing him say this, she could only grit her teeth and suppress her anger. "Even if I kill a tiger or a leopard and throw it in front of Your Majesty, no one will believe it." She picked up the memorial on the table and said, "I've already arranged everything." She unfolded it and looked at it, continuing, "The hunt is still a month away. Your Majesty said you wanted to go to the summer resort to escape the heat and asked me to go with you. So I'll take this opportunity to give Your Majesty some special training." She narrowed her eyes. "Then Your Majesty can show off your skills in front of everyone. When the officials see Your Majesty's transformation, I'll prepare tigers and leopards for you, and they'll believe it." Although he was used to it, hearing Meng You say this still made him feel a little disappointed. So, everything's been arranged. He rested his head on the table, propping his face up with his hand, thinking to himself, could it be that the imperial consort, like the Empress Dowager, is also greedy for power and want me to be a puppet so she can rule from behind the curtain. Meng Yu noticed the emperor's obvious drop in mood and was completely baffled. He was fine just a moment ago. Why is he suddenly so down? Am I too old to keep up with the thinking of young people? But she didn't think much of it. The reason wasn't important. Coaxing him was the priority. Thinking this, she unhesitatingly reached out and patted Jizzy's head, startling him so much that his large, watery eyes widened, and his handsome face instantly turned as red as a ripe tomato. He struggled internally. What is the imperial consort doing? Men and women shouldn't touch. How dare she pat my head? He began to fantasize again. Could it be that the noble consort likes me, but is too embarrassed to admit it? Lost in his self-absorbed world, he thought, yes, I'm handsome and dashing, a cut above the rest of the men in the capital. Ji Shuang isn't even fit to polish my shoes. It's only natural that the noble consort is captivated by my looks. Suddenly, he shivered. No, if the noble consort is like this now, if I truly gain power in the future, with her longing for me like this, wouldn't I become her kept man? Ji Shuang imagined Meng Yu whispering in his arms, Your Majesty, you must serve this consort well. He pushed her hand away in shame, shouting, Don't touch me. To protect his virtue, he declared, I am the emperor. I will never be subdued and reduced to a male consort. He told himself, although the noble consort's fantasy is beautiful, it's too naive. I will rely on my own talent to revive the imperial power. I will become a wise ruler. Then the noble consort will have to obediently serve me. Ji Shuang imagined conquering Meng Yu, whispering to the breathless beauty, Noble consort, you must serve me well. Meng Yu watched him, his hand propping up his cheek, lost in his fantasy, and asked in confusion, Your Majesty, what are you smiling about? You're drooling. He didn't answer her question, instead changing the subject. He clenched his fist, showing his determination. I need to prepare for the hunt. Have someone arrange the Imperial Lodge. We'll leave tomorrow. His string of illogical actions puzzled her. She thought to herself, although this child is strange, it's always good to have ambition. In Xianing Palace, the Empress Dowager was not so happy. The sound of smashing objects echoed as the palace maids hurriedly tried to dissuade her. Your Majesty, please calm down. Suddenly, an idea came to her. She immediately ordered, I'm feeling unwell. Go to the Imperial Hospital and summon the Imperial physicians. The palace maids didn't dare delay and hurried off to carry out her command. Soon, they led a group of Imperial physicians into the hall. Imperial physicians, quickly, she had a plan forming in her mind. Let's see if you still dare to take Meng Yu to the Imperial Lodge. I'll pin the label of unfilial piety on you. Meng Yu received the newly delivered medical record, picked it up, and looked at it carefully. She sighed, causing such a fuss over this illness. It seems they want to stop me from teaching that tyrant a lesson. The noble consort refused to give in and immediately summoned Shenjili. He bowed respectfully. Your ladyship, what are your orders? She took out a letter and handed it to him, carefully instructing, deliver this letter to his majesty. Shenjili quickly accepted the order. Yes, your ladyship. The eunuch's announcement broke the silence of Chengning Palace. His majesty has arrived. Meng Yu rushed into the hall, crying out in grief, Empress Dowager. He threw himself at the bedside, tears streaming down his face, his voice sharp enough to pierce one's ears. Empress Dowager, open your eyes and look at me. The palace maids and the 3 imperial physicians in the hall watched this scene, all thinking to themselves, the Empress Dowager is clearly fine, yet he can cry so dramatically. Although they felt it was fake, they still had to insincerely praise this actor. His Majesty is truly a model of filial piety. He coldly drew his sword and turned, pointing it directly at the imperial physicians. If you cannot cure the Empress Dowager, I will have you all dragged out and executed. The glint of the sword frightened everyone. Where did this sword come from? Did he bring it specifically to execute people? They thought, the Empress Dowager is feigning illness. How can we cure her? If we don't cooperate with the Empress Dowager, we'll definitely be beheaded. Better to say what the Empress Dowager instructed. Thinking this, he immediately said respectfully, Your Majesty. The Empress Dowager fell ill due to excessive worry. Meng Yu sternly interrupted. It's clearly because the weather is too hot. The Empress Dowager suffered from heat stroke. You can't even tell this. I think this quack should be killed. The imperial physician watched the emperor brandish his sword and fearfully cowed out. The Empress Dowager indeed suffered from heat stroke brought on by excessive worry. He thought to himself, if I don't cooperate with the emperor, I'll die here. Emperor Meng pointed his sword at each of them, gritting his teeth as he asked, "What do you think?" The imperial physicians trembled as they replied, "The Empress Dowager." Hesitating for a moment, they decided to side with the emperor. She indeed suffered from heat stroke. He clasped the Empress Dowager's hand affectionately, feigning filial piety. "I was thinking of taking Consort Rong to the mountain resort for the summer. Would the Empress Dowager like to join us?" The Empress Dowager was frightened, thinking, "Once I leave the palace, who knows how many people want me dead." For that woman, he's becoming more and more resourceful. Not daring to risk her life, she politely declined. "I am unwell and wish only to recuperate in the palace." Emperor Meng pondered for a moment, then said, "With the Empress Dowager in poor health, it would be unfilial of me to take Consort Rong away from the palace." The Empress Dowager smiled triumphantly, thinking this was precisely the outcome she desired. Suddenly, the emperor jumped up and spread a mat on the floor. "I will personally attend to the Empress Dowager here until she recovers, and then we will go to the summer resort." The palace maids were flustered and remonstrated. "Your Majesty, you can't just spread a mat here." The palace of compassion and tranquility appeared calm on the outside, but inside, it had been in chaos since morning. The emperor's pleading voice, "Come now, imperial grandmother. Good medicine tastes bitter. Drink one more bowl," mingled with the Empress Dowager's protests and the palace maid's dissuasions. "Your Majesty, you haven't slept in 3 days. Your health cannot bear it." Day after day, he fed her medicine and changed her water, frightening both the Empress Dowager and the palace maids attending her. "Your Majesty, your filial piety is touching, but when will you return to court?" Even the ministers came to plead, wanting to know when he would return. Faced with this question, Emperor Ming calmly wiped the Empress Dowager's face and coldly replied, "I will not return until Imperial Grandmother recovers." Although the Empress Dowager was furious, she could only grit her teeth and endure. Rumors began to spread throughout the palace. The palace maids now praised the emperor's filial piety, saying he had grown thin from caring for the Empress Dowager. The rumors of his cruelty quickly dissipated. They began to view the emperor in a new light. Upon hearing this, Jizi laughed scornfully, thinking that the Empress Dowager's illness could not be cured by mere care. She couldn't bear the pressure. After only a few days, she gave in, crying out, "I have recovered. Your Majesty, please return to the palace." As soon as he returned to Shufeng Palace, he gave Meng You a thumbs up. "Thanks to my beloved consort's brilliant plan. But she's so wicked, always pushing Consort Rong forward, preventing us from being intimate." Meng You said seriously, "Although being away from the palace allows for relaxation, once outside, you will be closely monitored. Your Majesty, your words and actions must still be cautious." Jizi calmly listed names, as usual. Consort Rong is the Empress Dowager's person. Lucy is the commander of the embroidered uniform guard, the guards of the regent's people, and there are more in the shadows. This time, she was truly surprised. Your Majesty even knows that the commander of the embroidered uniform guard is the regent's man. He didn't hide it, immediately explaining, "At a banquet, I pretended to be drunk and overheard Lucy and the regent talking." The water in the cup reflected Meng Yu's gloomy face. She thought with a headache. The embroidered uniform guard was originally the sharp claws of military power, but now those claws are aimed at the emperor. After they left, Shufeng Palace returned to its usual quiet. Besides the dozens of palace maids and eunuchs in attendance, there was also a man on horseback, his attire completely different from the surrounding servants. This person was Lucy, the commander of the embroidered uniform guard. Before getting into the palanquin, she deliberately looked back at him. Her phoenix eyes stared straight at him, unmoving, for a few seconds before gently lowering. Just as she entered the palanquin, she heard Jizi excitedly boasting about his accomplishment. "I've already driven that Consort Rong into another palanquin. It's just the two of us here. We can do whatever we want." Ignoring his excitement, she turned to the palanquin window and gently lifted the curtain. Then, as if greeting an old friend, she cheerfully called out Commander Lucy. He bowed respectfully, maintaining etiquette. "Greetings, noble consort Meng. What are your commands?" Unexpectedly, she changed her demeanor and replied warmly, "We've known each other since we were young. Just call me Meng You like before. There's no need to be so formal." Jizi wasn't so relaxed upon hearing this. Jealousy immediately surged within him. "Known each other since childhood, huh?" Lucy remained indifferent. "Your ladyship jests. This subordinate wouldn't dare presume." Resting his chin in his hand, the emperor pursed his lips and frowned, brimming with jealousy. My dear consort, you certainly have a lot of childhood sweethearts. His brow furrowed, each word laced with jealousy. My dear consort, you really do have quite a few childhood sweethearts. Meng You glanced at him, puzzled, wondering what he was eavesdropping on. Suddenly, an idea struck her. She asked brightly, Lord Liu, it's been a while. Care for a spar? The proposal seemed to put him in a difficult position, but before he could answer, he was already dealing with the flashes of her whip. Both of them leaped into the air, clashing amidst the bamboo. He didn't hold back, responding seriously, my apologies. As soon as he finished speaking, the noble consort's whip continued its furious dance, forcing him to twist and dodge in the air. One attacking, the other defending, they quickly disappeared into the depths of the bamboo forest. The eunuch standing outside sighed. How could the noble consort just run off with the commander of the embroidered uniform guard like that? As soon as he spoke, he broke out in a cold sweat, for the emperor was also radiating a murderous aura. Of course, Liu Shi wasn't a fool. Once they reached a secluded spot, he stopped and asked, Meng You, you deliberately led me here. Do you have something to say? Her whip suddenly fell to the ground. Tears streamed down her beautiful face, evoking pity. Her brow furrowed, as if in self-reproach. Did Ji Shuang send you to protect me? She thought to herself, that stubborn regent is probably afraid that others will discover our relationship. I need to test him. Seeing her tears, Liu Shi hurriedly explained, don't cry. The regent did instruct me to protect your safety, also to prevent you from being alone with the tyrant. She pretended to wipe her tears, thinking scornfully, it seems the regent hasn't told Liu Shi about my true feelings and stance. He still thinks I'm being forced, that I only love the regent. A man's pride is truly amusing. She reminded herself, think of Meng You. Crying a little is enough. Turning to Liu Shi, she said, His Highness is thoughtful. Unexpectedly, he replied seriously, don't worry, Meng You. I will definitely protect you and never let that tyrant harm you. As soon as the words left his mouth, the atmosphere between them froze, becoming extremely awkward. He screamed internally, that's not right. Her martial arts are so strong. That tyrant is no match for her. He could only try to smooth things over, saying, if you need anything, just come to me. Hearing this, she smiled happily, the joy of achieving her goal making her reply cheerfully, okay. Meanwhile, the situation inside the palanquin wasn't much better. He sat inside, rubbing his aching head in frustration, thinking sadly, the noble consort abandoned me and went with Liu Shi. She doesn't care about me at all. I must endure. And she left me with someone who looks like Shunji to taunt me. I must endure. But guess what? He just couldn't take it anymore and exploded. Endure what? Get out. Who can endure being cuckolded like this? Shinjili could only grit his teeth and bear it. The eunuch attending the emperor hurried forward to shield Shinjili. Your Majesty, please calm down. The noble consort is a martial artist. Perhaps she simply felt the urge to spar with Lord Liu. But the emperor was far from calm. He kicked them away, shouting, shut up. You get out too. Then he completely lost control, venting his rage like a madman inside the palanquin. When Meng Yu returned, he was still fuming. The palanquin was empty. She asked curiously, Jizihe, where are Jili and Little Zhang? Seeing her return, he gave her a cold look. Annoying. I kicked him out. She stood there, deflated, thinking, I'm working day and night for the future of the Great Qin, and he's throwing a tantrum at me. She grabbed his wrist and pulled it up, exasperated. You're in a dangerous situation right now, with only Eunuch Zhang truly loyal to you. What are you getting angry about? He bit his lip, enduring the pain without a sound. This made her suspicious. She frowned, thinking he used to cry and beg for mercy when I hit him. Why is he so stubborn now? She pulled his face closer, speaking softly. Tell me what's wrong. Let me tell you, Your Majesty, don't try to play the victim with me. I won't fall for it. Although embarrassed, he stubbornly replied, You were the one who wronged me first, yet you're acting so self-righteous. Now, it was Meng Yu's turn to be stunned. When did I wrong you? He was so angry he started to cry, saying, Warrior Chief, Ly, everyone knows who that Shun Jili resembles. If you care so much about Shunji, I'll summon him to the palace right now, and you won't need a substitute. She finally understood what he was angry about. He thought he was being cuckolded, feeling wronged. She thought, fine, Shinjili might look like Shin Shun, but I didn't choose that. It has nothing to do with me. She forced herself to soothe him. It's just a coincidence that he resembles Shun Shun. I swear. She leaned down to caress his cheek. Does it hurt? I was too rough just now. Let me rub it for you. While comforting him, she thought, for the sake of Qin, I must make him happy. He opened his eyes wide in surprise, looking incredulously at the face before him. She had never been so tender and considerate to me. Meng You leaned down, resting her chin on GZ's shoulder. She wondered why the young emperor's face was so red. Could it be? She swallowed noticeably and whispered in his ear, Your Majesty, do you desire my attendance in your bedchamber? Blushing, he called her name, Meng You. He hesitated. Could it be that the noble consort desires? Suddenly, she reached out and pinched his shoulder joint, making him cry out in pain. Her expression turned cold. Grabbing his collar, she warned, playing along with you is enough. Don't push it. Don't cross the line. Meng You stopped joking and said seriously, Zishun or not, in my eyes, they're only loyal ministers and treacherous ministers. Remember, Your Majesty and I are on the same side. Don't make wild guesses in the future. GZ was stunned by her words, unsure if she was being truthful. In the end, he chose to believe her and raised 3 fingers, cheerfully swearing, All right, from now on, whatever the noble consort asks me to do, I will do. He opened the palanquin door and ordered, Depart immediately for the imperial retreat. But Eunuch Zhang reported, Minister Liu has not yet returned. Hearing this, his face darkened. Am I not the emperor? Do I have to wait for him before departing? Liu Shi has abandoned his post and disregarded my safety. Upon his return, he will receive 20 heavy strokes. He can receive his punishment after we arrive at the imperial retreat. Meng You said from inside the palanquin. The imperial guards all listened to Liu Shi along the way. If Liu Shi is petty, Your Majesty will suffer. The emperor pursed his lips. Hearing this, he finally made a firm decision. I have the dignity of an emperor. I will not be easily trampled upon. Seeing such a change in him, the noble consort couldn't help but praise him with a smile. Then she patted his shoulder and comforted him. All right, Your Majesty, don't worry. I won't let him bully you. The emperor looked at the noble consort before him and thought bitterly. The emperor has his dignity, but in front of this woman, I have none at all. After arriving at the imperial retreat, Eunuch Zhang asked him about the sleeping arrangements. Your Majesty, how should consort Rong and consort Meng be accommodated? GZ. He stepped onto the ground and said directly, Meng You will naturally stay with me. Then, he turned to look at consort Rong, who was getting out of her palanquin, and ordered, Arrange for her to stay in the place furthest from my bedchamber. He frowned, a fierce glint in his eyes. Don't say, I haven't touched her. If I were to touch her even once, even if she hadn't done anything, the Empress Dowager would pin something on her. That would be my death sentence. Eunuch Zhang looked at the consort with some sympathy, thinking, the way His Majesty speaks, it's as if consort Rong is the only one in the palace who desires the emperor's favor. It's a pity His Majesty has no interest in her. But this is the master's business, so it's not appropriate for me to interfere. So, he hurriedly instructed the servants to carry and organize the consort's belongings. However, he accidentally tripped over the threshold. With a bang, handcuffs, whips, ropes, and other such items scattered across the floor, leaving him dumbfounded. He covered his mouth, thinking, there are rumors in the palace that His Majesty has some peculiar bedroom preferences. Could this be why consort Meng is favored while consort Rong isn't? He frantically stuffed the items back into the chest, panicking. Will I be silenced for seeing this? With a thud, he closed the chest. Suddenly, a hand landed on his shoulder, and someone called his name in his ear, making his hair stand on end. Eunuch Zhang. He had no choice but to confess. This old servant didn't see anything. Meng. You looked at him and thought, he probably thinks I'm going to use these weapons against the tyrant. She chuckled. There's no need for the eunuch to be alarmed. If I wanted His Majesty to obey, I wouldn't need these tools. My hands are enough. These words left him even more dumbfounded. His face turned as red as a tomato. He coughed awkwardly. Ahem, these are things I obtained for free. Your ladyship, please conduct yourself with propriety. But she said nonchalantly, I know that without you telling me. I'm already being very restrained. Otherwise, I would have taken the emperor down long ago. Eunuch Zhang was terrified by these words, wanting nothing more than to escape. Help! This woman is a she-wolf. Just then, the emperor entered and shooed him away. Everything's here, so get out. Don't just stand there. Eunuch Zhang and the other servants scurried off. Hurry, hurry, he thought, who couldn't wait till nightfall. Once everyone was gone, GZ said, the hunting grounds are near the imperial retreat. Since Liu Shi is injured and can't follow, it's a good opportunity to practice. Let's practice now. She picked up her clothes. Let's change. Looking around and not seeing a screen, Meng You asked. There's no changing room here. The Emperor's heart pounded. Could it be? We're changing together. Meng Yu's face flushed, her heart racing. Excitedly, she thought, are we really going to change together? He stammered, I'll go to the washroom. But Meng Yu felt that was too much trouble for him, so she refused. No need. She untied her outer robe and walked behind the screen. I'll change behind the screen. Her fair and delicate figure could be faintly seen through the screen. Her sweet voice drifted out, Your Majesty can change in the hall. This beautiful sight made the Emperor both shy and curious. He told himself he shouldn't look, but in the end, he could only sigh and turn to change his clothes. She finished putting on her shoes, tucked her pants into her boots, and emerged excitedly. I'm done changing. Hearing her voice, he quickly turned around, seeing every muscle taut and powerful. Meng Yu exclaimed, People who practice martial arts have such nice figures. This made the Emperor blush and turn away. He thought awkwardly. I knew the noble consort had a crush on my body. That's why she asked me to change with her. But then he suddenly realized that as a man, he was always being teased by the noble consort. This male-female dynamic was completely wrong. Thinking this, he immediately turned back and reached out to caress her beautiful face. He braced himself against the wall with one hand, trapping her between himself and the wall. He lowered his voice, Noble consort, GZ. He gently took her hand and placed it on his chest, his handsome face full of confidence. Do you like what you see? Meng Yu was momentarily stunned. The next second, she was furious. Her delicate brows furrowed, a sneer playing on her lips. She kicked him hard. What good is looking good? Let's go practice. The kick made him yelp. I'll have you know, I'm not just good looking, I'm also useful. She immediately taunted. If your majesty were useful, we wouldn't need to practice. They arrived at the training grounds one after the other. Meng Yu quickly laid out the plan. Before we practice, we need to test your majesty's skills. She raised her riding crop. Let's start with horseback riding. With that, she spurred her horse forward, GZ close behind. The sound of hooves echoed across the training grounds. She admired his horsemanship, quite intrigued. I'm not slow, but your majesty can keep up. He boasted proudly. They all say I can't shoot arrows, but that's not true. Because I'm often assassinated, my skills at escaping on horseback are top-notch. She let out an O. She hadn't expected him to be able to dodge her whip while distracted, giving him another chance to show off. Assassins often use hidden weapons, so I'm also excellent at dodging them. He struck a dashing pose. Now do you believe I'm both good-looking and useful? A moment later, a tied-up rabbit appeared on the training grounds, surrounded by dozens of arrows. Meng Yu scolded the emperor. The rabbit is tied up, and your majesty still can't hit it, missing every time. Good-looking and useful. Huh. The previously cool GZ deflated. I can ride a horse, but I can't shoot arrows, so everyone mistakenly thinks I can't do either. After a strenuous training session, the two led their horses back, bringing the rabbit with them. He asked curiously, are we taking this rabbit back to roast? She shook her head. It's for your majesty to keep. The emperor was stunned. I'm a grown man. How can I keep a rabbit? She stroked the rabbit's head. Do I even need to ask? Between the two of us, who seems more likely to catch a rabbit for fun? Even the horses beside them seemed to be laughing at him. Lu Shi, covered in injuries, lay in bed and asked his confidant. His majesty went hunting with the noble consort as soon as they arrived at the retreat. Yes, and the noble consort was holding a wild rabbit. His majesty probably caught it to appease her. He scoffed. A rabbit is enough to make the noble consort happy. It's more likely she caught it to appease his majesty. Our emperor, even catching a wild rabbit is a difficult task for him. The lights finally came on in Shufeng Palace. Jizi lay on the carpet and sighed. I can finally rest. I'm exhausted today. Meng Yu looked at him with concern. You've been traveling for days, and you went to the hunting grounds today. You must be very tired. She reached out and brushed the hair away from his forehead. This intimate gesture made him blush shyly. She patted his head again, her face full of affection. Your Majesty, go to sleep. Jizi's mind was filled with only those 3 words. Go to sleep. Facing her devastating smile, he whispered, Your Highness, this is too sudden. I'm not mentally prepared. Meng Yu blushed. This is too sudden. I'm not mentally prepared. Having said that, he abruptly withdrew his hand, leaving the noble consort looking bewildered. Did sleeping require mental preparation? Had she been too strict with him lately? He practically fled the room, shouting, I'm going to bathe. Your Highness, you sleep first. Jizi didn't calm down until he ran out of the palace gates. He looked back longingly. The noble consort invited me, but I ran away. Will she be sad? He muttered to himself, I have to go back, or the noble consort will be heartbroken. But when he turned to face the door, the emperor froze again, then suddenly crouched down, covering his burning face and ears with his hands. Wait, I have to be mentally prepared before I go back. Meng You was sitting in the room when she suddenly heard a noise on the roof. She asked warily, who's there? Lu Shi jumped down from the roof, his ribs nearly broken. He could only clutch the table pathetically and say, Meng You, my dear sister, it's me. I heard you went hunting with the emperor tonight. She thought awkwardly, judging by his injuries, he had really been beaten up badly, and by his own men. He could have pretended, but he was so honest. She put on her outer robe and stood up coldly. Tired of being pestered by that tyrant, I made a bet with him. If he could hunt 10 fox pelts, I would listen to him. Hearing this, Lu Shi grabbed his hair in exasperation. What? How could you make such a bet? Meng You smiled disdainfully. Do you think that tyrant can ride a horse and shoot an arrow? Hearing this, he breathed a sigh of relief. His majesty indeed cannot learn. Suddenly, his expression turned serious. He thought better safe than sorry. Thinking of this, he immediately jumped back onto the roof. Meng You, my dear sister, rest early. I'll be going now. In his heart, he thought, I'm going to catch every fox within 100 miles. I can't let the emperor get any. Once he left, the room became quiet again. Meng You could only shake her head helplessly. Lu Shi is such an honest man. He believes everything he's told. Suddenly, there was another noise in the room. She just turned her head when she saw Jizi emerge from behind the screen. She couldn't help but worry. I thought it was Shun Jili just now. I forgot he knows martial arts and can conceal his presence. I don't know how much the emperor heard. Unexpectedly, his silence made her even more flustered. She could only explain in a low voice. Lu Shi came suddenly. He interrupted her. I saw him. I also heard you say I couldn't learn to ride and shoot. She hurriedly explained, that was an act. Your Majesty, don't take it to heart. Seeing him just tidying the bedding and pillows. Without responding, she continued to explain, I believe your Majesty has the talent to become a master horseman and archer. She didn't even know what she was feeling guilty about. While she was speaking, he had already lain down on the bed and stammered, let's sleep. I'm ready. Seeing him willing to go to bed, she cheered up and hurried to get the carpet. Let me lay out the carpet. As long as you're not angry, it's fine. Seeing this, Jizi suddenly realized what she meant. He blushed and suggested, let's sleep together. Afraid she would misunderstand, he quickly explained, I don't mean to offend you. I just can't bear to see your highness suffer. Then he hurriedly stopped her. If your highness doesn't believe me, I'll lay out the carpet with you. I can't be comfortable while your highness suffers. His concern made her sigh indulgently. She allowed him to lie on the bed and placed a pillow as a boundary. Your Majesty, just sleep well. Cross this line and you'll face the consequences. After saying that, she blew out the candle and everything fell into darkness. Even after Meng You fell into a deep sleep, he was still gazing at her face adoringly. Her beauty captivated him. The noble consort asleep like a celestial being descended to the mortal realm. He drifted off to sleep, filled with this joy. Soft moonlight streamed into the bedchamber, dancing across Jizi's handsome face. Meng You held him close, the distance between them gone. The moonlight bathed the entire Qinggong. In the middle of the night, Meng You awoke, flushed and feeling hot. She found herself holding Jizi, his arm around her waist. She couldn't help but think how audacious this boy was. But then she realized she had rolled over the bolster and embraced him. The realization made her blush even deeper. It was my sleeping habits, then. She snuggled closer, trying to identify the pleasant scent emanating from him. The aroma was so familiar. She blushed, remembering it was much like the late emperor's. The thought made her eyes widen in shock. Before, it was just her face. Now, even her ears were burning. What am I thinking? Even an old cow wouldn't graze on young grass. She quickly pulled the covers over herself, determined to sleep and banish such absurd thoughts. Jizi awoke, his arms still around her waist. Seeing her holding him tightly, his heart filled with joy, a smile gracing his lips. After dressing, he went out and told eunuch Zhang not to disturb the noble consort, as he was going fox hunting today. The emperor mounted his horse, and eunuch Zhang followed closely behind to the hunting grounds. Eunuch Zhang looked around at the empty landscape, puzzled. Your Majesty, are there really foxes here? I don't see any. He suddenly remembered the fox hunting wager the noble consort had mentioned yesterday. Lucy must have left in a hurry after hearing about it. He must be sabotaging me, trying to prevent me from catching a fox. He changed his target. Drawing his bow, he aimed. Then I'll hunt a rabbit. With a whoosh, the arrow flew, startling a rabbit dozing by a rock. The arrow landed beside the rabbit, which stared blankly at him. His excitement vanished instantly, and eunuch Zhang behind him covered his mouth, stifling a laugh. Embarrassed and annoyed, he began shooting arrows randomly. Don't force me. But even so, his arrows missed the rabbit. The rabbit even gave him a look of disappointment, further infuriating him. He pulled back his bowstring with all his might. Meng You watched from a tree as the emperor practiced archery. After he shot dozens of arrows, eunuch Zhang simply walked over and caught the rabbit with his bare hands. He tearfully hung the rabbit upside down from a tree branch, muttering to himself, I must protect His Majesty's innocent heart. I can't let anyone attack him. After the farce, he patted his horse and said with a smile, Your Majesty, just consider it archery practice. We'll stand still and let you aim. Jizi looked at the bow in his hand, thinking that he had never killed a living creature before. Shinjili reminded Meng You that there were imperial guards observing nearby, and it wasn't convenient for the noble consort to appear. She furrowed her brows slightly, her phoenix eyes downcast, ignoring Shinjili's half-hearted attempt to stop her. She leaped down gracefully, her sudden appearance startling even the emperor. Noble consort. She sat directly behind him and grasped his wrist as he held the bow. She adjusted his posture, ensuring success, and whispered in his ear, Your Majesty. Releasing his hand, the arrow flew like a shooting star. It hit the rope, tying the rabbit, proving to him that he didn't need prey delivered to him. She picked up another arrow. Watching the fleeing rabbit, she continued to whisper in his ear, This arrow is because once you set your sights on something, you shouldn't let it escape. As soon as she finished speaking, the arrow struck the rabbit. For the next arrow, GZ drew the bow himself, with Meng You assisting from behind. She encouraged him, A tree desires stillness, but the wind will not cease. Since Your Majesty has come to this hunting ground, every living creature can become Your Majesty's prey. Following the noble consort's words, the arrow flew towards a nearby deer. This hunting ground exists for Your Majesty, just as the court officials serve Your Majesty. The third arrow struck the nearby deer. With one shot, the target fell dead. Meng You maintained a serious expression. If anyone dares to harbor disloyalty, she continued, Your Majesty must punish them severely. Her imposing manner left GZ feeling a mixture of respect, awe, and a flutter of attraction that brought a blush to his cheeks. Meng You pressed on, If anyone dares to betray you, Your Majesty should behead them as a warning to others. Show no mercy. Her sharp tone made him flush crimson and his eyes widen. Suddenly, noticing movement behind a rock, she blurted out, Your Majesty is truly useless. Jumping off her horse, she said, blushing, Even a rabbit needs me to kill it. Your Majesty really should work on your arm strength. Then, she bid the emperor farewell. This official takes her leave. Hearing this, Lucy breathed a sigh of relief. He had assumed the noble consort had come to assist the tyrant, but it turned out she was there to mock him. GZ was busy practicing his punches, the sound of his fists echoing in the air. He muttered himself, I must increase my arm strength. Before long, he was exhausted and stopped to rest, quite a pitiful sight. The bearded man standing nearby was worried, but didn't dare to speak. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, he respectfully stepped forward and bowed. Your Majesty, he said, there's a stone bow in the training grounds that ordinary people cannot draw. It would be most effective for training your arm strength. The emperor replied, Oh, is that so? He couldn't help but feel wary. To approach a notorious tyrant. Was this man incredibly brave, or did he have ulterior motives? He asked for the man's name. The man introduced himself. This humble official is Zhang Yaozhong, captain. Upon hearing this, the emperor instructed him to fetch the stone bow for inspection. After he left, eunuch Zhang whispered, Your Majesty, this person is deliberately approaching you. I fear he has treacherous intentions. Please be careful. Hearing this, the emperor thought to himself, Weren't you the same way initially? But I have no one I could trust now. I can only take this risk. Zhang Yaozhong quickly returned with the bow for the emperor to examine. He strained to pull the bowstring slightly, explaining, if drawn a little, it can shoot 100 paces. If drawn an inch, it can shoot 500 paces and even further up to 1,000. If drawn with full force, its power is limitless, unstoppable. He aimed at a distant rock and released the arrow. It struck the center of the rock, splitting it instantly. The emperor and the eunuch were stunned, filled with admiration. GZ stepped forward and patted Zhang Yaozhong on the shoulder, saying encouragingly, "It just so happens I need a skilled archer. Report to the palace gates tomorrow and give your name." Zhang Yaozhong kowtowed. "Thank you, your majesty." Taking the bow, he declared confidently, "I will use this stone bow to train my arm strength." However, the moment Zhang Yaozhong let go, the emperor was pulled downwards by the bow's weight. Zhang Yaozhong quickly warned, "Your majesty, be careful." Sweat dripped from his face and onto the ground. He strained with all his might to pull the bow, thinking to himself, "I must become a wise ruler worthy of the noble consort." Night fell, and the palace was brightly lit. The emperor stood pathetically in his room, clutching a pile of blankets. He thought to himself, being worthy of a noble consort is truly difficult. Meng You naturally noticed his efforts. "Your majesty trains so diligently every day," she said. "From now on, you may sleep on the bed." Her words filled him with joy, his eyes lighting up. He then feigned shyness. "May I really?" The image of throwing herself into his arms the previous day replayed in Meng Yu's mind, her cheeks flushing. She stammered, Before she could finish, he had already arranged the sleeping situation, coaxing her, "Since the noble consort has said so, then let us sleep together." He thought triumphantly, "This is the best version of a noble consort." Before going to sleep, Meng Yu encouraged herself, "I must maintain an elegant sleeping posture." They placed a pillow between them as a barrier, each turning their backs to the other. As for GZ, he was also admonishing himself, "I must not have any improper thoughts." It was another clear night. In the middle of the night, GZ suddenly awoke with a gasp. He felt something heavy pressing down on him. Looking down, he saw that it was his beloved noble consort, fast asleep and snuggled tightly against him. He couldn't help but gulp. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down as he wrestled with his inner turmoil, repeatedly chanting to himself, "I am a gentleman, I am a gentleman," attempting to suppress his desires. Suddenly, a thought struck him. Isn't the noble consort seducing me? Does she expect me to endure like Lu Jiaowei? A bestial glint flashed in his handsome eyes. If the noble consort insists on being heartless, then don't blame me for being unreasonable. Let's be beasts together. But after struggling for a while, he could only move his neck, so he decided to gently nibble on her to wake her up. His first thought was, I should bite her eye. But after much deliberation, he realized he didn't know where to bite. If he ruined her beautiful face, she would definitely kill him. He then glanced at her snow-white neck. But he was still afraid that he might accidentally hurt his precious noble consort if he used too much force. After some hesitation, he finally chose her ear. As soon as his teeth touched her ear, a rush of pleasure and numbness spread through his body. But when he saw her earlobe turn red, he became conflicted again. Should he continue or stop? Before he could make a decision, Meng You let out a soft moan of discomfort. Then her phoenix eyes slightly opened, looking at him in confusion. GZ, seeing Meng You half awake, blushed immediately, thinking, although I wanted to bite her awake. Her voice interrupted his thoughts. The emperor didn't dare to hesitate, immediately let go, and then didn't dare to look at her face, just stammered, "Why, you're awake." The noble consort heard this. Didn't hit him, but just asked curiously, "Did I make the first move?" The emperor immediately raised his hand and swore. This subject wouldn't dare speak falsely to the noble consort. "I just wanted to wake you up." Hearing this confirmation, she became even more embarrassed, hurriedly grabbing the quilt and pillow to jump to the floor. "That's why I said I'd sleep on the floor." He didn't want her to suffer and quickly laid everything out. "No, let me sleep on the floor." In the end, they both made their beds on the floor, neither daring to be the first to reconcile. GZ could only blush and move further away. Seeing his strong reaction, Meng You also quickly pulled her quilt further away. Yes, a little further. Eunuch Zhang peeked in curiously, wanting to hear some gossip. But the two inside were busy being embarrassed and didn't notice him at all, just thinking, this far should be fine, right? Eunuch Zhang chatted and drank tea with Zhang Yaozhong. Until late at night, too bored, he confided to Zhang Yaozhong. His Majesty has a very low status at home. Hearing this, he sighed. As expected, His Majesty spoils the noble consort too much. But Eunuch Zhang waved his hand. It's not that His Majesty spoils the noble consort. It's the noble consort who spoils His Majesty. He whispered in his ear. His Majesty has a masochistic tendency. The more the noble consort bullies him, the happier he is. Zhang Yaozhong was shocked, thinking, can I just listen to this for free? He raised his head and finished his tea. Then he placed the teacup heavily on the table, gritting his teeth in protest. How can His Majesty be so timid? As His Majesty's confidants, we must help His Majesty establish his patriarchal authority. But he sighed heavily. Do you know why His Majesty has been practicing martial arts recently? Because His Majesty... No, we can't establish patriarchal authority. He only hated that he was a eunuch and couldn't help His Majesty in that aspect. Hearing this, Zhang Yaozhong blinked and asked, I have some yang strengthening medicine. Should I let His Majesty try it? Eunuch Zhang nodded approvingly at this idea. It's not good to say directly. Just say it's a prescription for practicing horsemanship and archery. They're both men. His Majesty will naturally understand. Maybe he'll even remember your contribution and promote you. As soon as he heard about promotion, his eyes lit up and he started to act early the next morning, pulling the emperor aside and whispering. Last night, this official thought of a method to strengthen the body. If your Majesty is interested, you can try it. He had no doubts and even patted his shoulder encouragingly. You've put in a lot of effort, my dear subject. I'll let the imperial physician take a look, and if there's no problem, I'll try it. He and Eunuch Zhang quickly gave a thumbs up, thinking, it seems His Majesty really needs this. He was still immersed in his fantasy. It's easy to forget icing on the cake, but people remember sending charcoal in the snow. His Majesty will definitely remember my contribution. However, before the emperor could figure out what the method was, the news reached Lu Shi's ears. After hearing it, he roared like crazy. What? The emperor asked the eunuchs to research aphrodisiacs. He angrily tore up the prescription that was sent and couldn't help but curse. That tyrant's lustful heart is still alive. He actually wants to use such despicable methods against the empress. How despicable. But his attendant asked, isn't noble consort Meng the emperor's consort? Reminded by him, he remembered to inform Meng You to be on guard. Lanterns were already lit in the palace, and Eunuch Zhang hurriedly chased after the emperor with a bowl of medicine. After he finished drinking it, he only felt a rush of heat surging through his body. Watching Lu Shi complain nonstop, Meng You finally spoke. If you're hot, take off your clothes. You're such a grown man. Do I have to teach you everything? Jizi readily took off his outer robe, but it didn't cool him down. Instead, he started sweating even more. The noble consort asked indifferently, you're not going to take off anything else, are you? But when she looked up, her eyes widened in shock. She pressed her lips together, trying to hold back, but to cover her embarrassment, she quickly grabbed a book and threw it at him. Don't be indecent, she scolded. The emperor looked wronged. But you told me to take it off, and it's because I'm so hot, not because I'm trying to be anything. Meng You, after calming herself, walked over and touched his forehead, confirming he didn't have a fever. The coolness of her hand made him sigh comfortably. So when she tried to pull her hand back, he couldn't help but grab it tightly, pressing her hand against his cheek. He softly called out, noble consort. He looked directly into her eyes, his cheeks flushed, making it impossible for her to avoid his adoring gaze. Meng You felt Jizi holding her arm against his face, murmuring, so hot, I'm so hot. But a sliver of reason told her something was wrong. Realizing he had overstepped, he quickly let go of her hand. By now, Meng You also sensed something amiss. Anxiously, she grabbed his wrist, taking his pulse with her medical knowledge. Casually, she asked, did you eat anything unusual? He answered with certainty, no, I didn't eat anything. Suddenly, he remembered. Oh right, I drank a tonic Zhang Yaozhong gave me, but Eunuch Zhang said the formula was normal. Her face darkened. She knew exactly what kind of tonic it was. Indeed, it is a tonic, she muttered, just not for what you think. She hurriedly pulled him to the lakeside in the dead of night. Jizi was still clueless as to why he was brought there. Then Meng Yu pointed to the moonlight on the water and made an absurd request. Your Majesty, I want the moonlight in the water. Can you scoop it up for me? He stared blankly and let out an ah. He anxiously wondered if he had offended the noble consort, and this was her punishment. Filled with guilt, he walked into the lake without a word. All right, I'll scoop it. While the emperor suffered, eunuch Zhang and Zhang Yaozhong were celebrating. They assumed the emperor would be so virile that the noble consort would be pleased. But before they could say much, another eunuch rushed in, panicked. "Quick! I heard the noble consort pushed the emperor into the lake." The news was like a bolt from the blue. They didn't know if the emperor's special tonic wasn't potent enough, or if the noble consort was too ferocious. Jeezy gently cupped the moonlight in his hands. "Noble consort," he asked softly, "is this enough?" But she coldly replied, "Not enough." He wasn't angry. Instead, he said earnestly, "I'll try harder." Watching him do this for her, Meng You couldn't help but feel touched. He knew the moonlight couldn't be scooped, yet he indulged her. Only the late emperor would. The thought made her pause. Why am I comparing him to the late emperor? She wondered. She began to recall. Come to think of it, from the time we changed clothes in the dressing room, I didn't feel anything even though he wasn't wearing clothes. But from that night, he held me, letting me sleep in his warm embrace. To today, I've been so unreasonable. The more Meng Yu thought about it, the stranger it felt. She coughed a few times, reminding herself that Jeezy was her nephew. Just then, eunuch Zhang arrived. Seeing the emperor alone in the water, he cried out in alarm, "Why hasn't anyone rescued his majesty?" Heavens! At this moment, a palace maid also ran over, panting. "I heard Lord Lucy hasn't recovered since he was beaten. His injuries are getting worse, but he's rushing over here. If this continues, I'm afraid Lord Lucy will die." Sure enough, Lucy and a young eunuch were hurrying towards them. Eunuch Zhang and Zhang Yaozhong were speechless at this master-servant pair. The noble consort not only kicked his majesty into the water, but also wouldn't let anyone save him. This was too much. Knowing he couldn't count on anyone else, he grabbed a nearby branch and muttered as he walked towards the lake, "How can I stand idly by? Even if I can't swim, I must save his majesty." He quickly bent down, extending the branch for the emperor to grab. With all his might, he urged, "Your majesty, please grab this branch. I'll do my best to pull you up." Who knew he would be rudely shoved away? "Get lost. Don't interfere." Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he turned and pleaded, "Noble consort, I'm a little cold." Meng Yu stroked her chin, calculating. "Can I come out now?" She guessed the medicine's effect had worn off and didn't want him to suffer any longer. "Your Majesty, you can come out." With permission granted, he happily turned to leave the water. However, for being submerged for so long, his legs suddenly cramped. Oh no, he could only bob up and down, flailing his arms and legs, yelling, "Help! Help!" This sudden mishap startled her. Her eyes widened, and she jumped into the water, shouting, "Your Majesty." The emperor hadn't even managed to call out concubine before he swallowed water and lost his bearings. Completely panicked, he was fortunate that Meng Yu quickly grasped his hand, pulled him close, and gave him mouth to mouth. Meng Yu finally dragged the emperor ashore. Eunuch Zhang looked at them anxiously. "Your Majesty, noble consort." Hearing a guard shout, "Lord Lu, we're coming to save you." She looked back curiously to see Lu. She was the one drowning. She couldn't help but wonder how this fellow, injured as he was, had managed to get into trouble here. She handed GZ over to eunuch Zhang to be taken back to the palace and looked after, but not before telling a nearby eunuch to keep an eye on Lu Shi. After Lord Lu was rescued, a physician should be called to treat him and ensure he rested well. The usually quiet palace was brightly lit late into the night. As soon as Meng Yu returned, she summoned Zhang Yaozhong and angrily demanded, "His Majesty is the Son of Heaven, yet you tricked him into taking medicine he shouldn't have." He hastily knelt, a loud thud echoing. The three people who heard this were shocked. She urgently pressed, "What do you mean by ulterior motives?" It took a while for GZ to react. "Why do you say it was medicine I shouldn't have taken?" Zhang Yaozhong quickly defended himself. How can an aphrodisiac be considered to have ulterior motives? Hearing his admission, the emperor froze. So the health tonic he told me about was an aphrodisiac. Understanding dawned on the emperor. He stepped forward, grabbed Zhang Yaozhong by the collar, and roared in his face, "Why did you give me that kind of medicine?" Eunuch Zhang didn't even have time to intervene. He pushed all the blame onto the eunuch, confessing. Eunuch Zhang said, "Your Majesty couldn't satisfy noble consort Meng, and we wanted to help your Majesty alleviate your worries." Hearing this explanation, the emperor stiffened. "Alleviate my worries." GZ gritted his teeth and demanded, "A beardless eunuch and a soldier who only understands swords, what qualifications do you have to question my abilities?" Rarely had they seen his Majesty so enraged. The two of them shrank back in fear. Looking at their expressions, his anger grew. He grabbed a whip from the bed and chased them away. "Get out! All of you get out!" Unbeknownst to him, they only hid in the nearby bushes. Seeing that the emperor and the consort hadn't given chase, eunuch Zhang dared to peek out and breathe a sigh of relief. At this point, Zhang Yaozhong's fury also flared. He roared at the eunuch, "You damned slave! You dare to trick me into presenting an aphrodisiac to His Majesty. Are you trying to kill me?" Unexpectedly, the eunuch still held his original view. He whispered, "Didn't you see?" His Majesty obviously couldn't admit it in front of the consort. It's clear that after taking the medicine, he was discovered by the consort and thrown into the water, so His Majesty took his anger out on us. Hearing this, Zhang Yaozhong seemed to understand. No wonder His Majesty has 3,000 beauties in his harem, but no heir. It turns out he really is incompetent. Persuaded, he flicked his sleeves and left. "I'm not getting involved anymore, lest His Majesty takes his displeasure out on me. I can't expose His Majesty's shortcomings." The two little eunuchs hiding in the bushes and eavesdropping exchanged stunned looks. His Majesty is incompetent. At this moment, GZ still didn't know that in a short time, this rumor would spread throughout the entire palace. He was comfortably soaking in warm water. His face was still flushed. Recalling everything that had just happened, he couldn't help but feel grateful. Fortunately, the consort discovered it in time. He panted, mouth agape. He imagined that if the aphrodisiac had taken full effect, doing that to the consort would have been a grave mistake. He straightened his clothes and entered the main hall, muttering about apologizing and thanking her. But before he could speak, the consort asked, "How does Your Majesty plan to punish them?" GZ smiled and scratched his head. "Leniently. Firstly, I don't have many capable people around me, and secondly, they didn't intend to harm me." Surprisingly, she agreed with him. "The noble consort concurs with Your Majesty's handling of the matter," she said. "However, they must be taught a lesson. From now on, we must be extra cautious and meticulously inspect everything to prevent another poisoning incident." Suddenly, he gave a wry smile. Does a noble consort think this hasn't happened before? She was puzzled by his words. He pulled out a packet of pills, reminiscing, "All these years, the regent has been working against me. The Empress Dowager needed me to continue her family line. It is precisely because I was prepared that I managed to avoid death." He picked up a pill, rolling it between his fingers, lifting it up for closer inspection, and calmly continued, "To maintain the facade a useless puppet, I had to feign ignorance, occasionally pretending to take those poisons. When Zhang Yaozhong delivered the medicine, I had a premonition, so I had the imperial physician examine it first." Instead of anger, he turned to her with a bright smile. "When a noble consort said there was a problem with the medicine, I thought those two were planning a rebellion. My heart sank, but discovering they only gave me an aphrodisiac. As long as it wasn't treason, I considered it a blessing." Meng You gently extended her left hand, her right hand softly caressing his cheek. In a low voice, she said, "Your Majesty has suffered, but from now on, everything will be all right." He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of her palm. "I don't resent fate," he murmured. "The regent set so many traps in the struggle for the throne, all for the sake of seizing it himself." Suddenly, his gaze turned icy. In a low voice, he declared, "But this position is already mine. Those who plotted will one day realize they actually helped cultivate a truly powerful emperor." Seeing the emperor's newfound determination, the noble consort couldn't help but admire. "This is the true emperor of the Great Qin." GZ embraced her tightly, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you, noble consort, for all the scolding and beatings. If it weren't for that, I would still be resigned to my fate, perhaps already having rushed onto the battlefield to my death." This was the first time he had thanked her, and she immediately blushed. Their foreheads touched. He was incredibly grateful that she had not only saved his life, but also completely changed it. Foreheads pressed together. They shared secrets never before spoken. GZ softly called her my empress, but she shyly averted her gaze, finally deciding to confess to unburden her heart. "Actually, this concubine did consider the regent, but ultimately chose to help Your Majesty because I believed you could become a better emperor." He was speechless with shock. She then urged him to rest early to avoid catching a cold, leaving him to toss and turn in bed, fuming, while the empress had already fallen asleep. Seeing that everything was quiet, he glared over angrily, unable to understand how she could sleep. But the next second, when she turned and embraced him, all his anger instantly dissipated. GZ quickly held her tight, thinking happily, forget it, let her be. The next day, sunlight shone on the two of them. Eunuch Zhang and Zhang Yaozhong were still kneeling before the emperor. After a long while, the emperor finally emerged, rubbing his stiff neck, and announced, "Prepare for the hunting grounds. Today, I will practice archery." The two men wept inwardly but dared not show it, hastily replying, "Yes, your majesty." GZ led the way. Two palace maids, chatting idly, jumped in fright upon seeing the emperor. They hurriedly bowed, leaving him puzzled. "Strange, why is everyone in the palace looking at me with such pity today?" Meanwhile, two young eunuchs were gossiping in the bushes. "His Majesty is impotent, you know. With His Majesty's temper, it must be because he's impotent that he takes it out on others. How pitiful." Engrossed in their conversation, they didn't notice GZ standing nearby, hearing everything clearly. He was utterly speechless at these servants. The arrow he shot pierced straight through a rabbit. Unable to argue against so many whispers, he decided to improve his skills to prove himself and dispel the rumors. At this time, Meng You, already dressed in her chambers, instructed her attendant. "Last night, Lu Shi jumped down to save someone despite his injuries. I'm afraid his condition has worsened. Accompany me to see him." The attendant naturally complied. She walked lightly into Lu Shi's resting room. Upon seeing her, he immediately tried to rise and bow. "Greetings, Your Highness." But she quickly stopped him. "There's no need for formalities, Minister Lu. Rest well." Lu Shi lowered his eyes, his face filled with guilt. Yesterday, this official learned that His Majesty had taken that aphrodisiac, and wanted to warn Your Highness, but it was too late. Fortunately, Your Highness discovered it in time. Meng Yu's face darkened. "Last time I hit that tyrant, I was almost punished by the Empress Dowager. This time I kicked him into the water. If news of this gets back to the palace, the Empress Dowager definitely won't let us off." Lu Shi quickly waved his hands in reassurance. "Your ladyship, please rest assured. His Majesty doesn't intend to pursue this matter, and this official will also suppress the news. It won't reach the palace." He suddenly lowered his voice and whispered, "The whole palace is gossiping about His Majesty's inability. This official dares to ask, is His Majesty truly?" Even after returning to her chambers, her thoughts were still in turmoil. The emperor had always shown aversion to the imperial concubines. It seemed he was truly hiding something. She suddenly thought of something and panicked. Heavens, could he really be impotent? It just so happened that GZ passed by and saw her suspicious look. He was inwardly annoyed. That look, could even a noble consort think I'm impotent? Seeing his seemingly guilty reaction, she became even more certain of her guess. She decided to enlighten him. "Your Majesty, if you cannot have children, your position will be in danger." Her expression was sincere. It's best to discover and treat such matters early. There's still hope. As soon as she turned around, she saw GZ glaring at her. "I'm very curious. From where did the noble consort obtain evidence of my supposed impotence?" She glanced pointedly at that area and began to analyze. "Your Majesty previously said that if someone in the harem gives birth, your position will be secure. These words make sense, but Your Majesty is in the prime of your life, yet there hasn't been any news from the harem. Unless Your Majesty is hiding something, this subject can't think of any other explanation." After listening to her, GZ's face darkened like the bottom of a pot, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He ripped open his collar. Meng Yu was startled by his actions and stammered, "WH, what are you doing?" He didn't hesitate to press her onto the table. "The noble consort doesn't believe what I said." He leaned close to her neck, his warm breath making her legs weak. "Only the power of the body can make the noble consort understand whether I am capable or not." As soon as he finished speaking, he began to nibble on her neck, making her blush crimson. He then shamelessly asked, "Can you feel it now?" His rudeness made her want to hit him. Shameless. But GZ easily caught her hand and retorted brazenly, "I am the emperor. How can favoring my own noble consort be considered shameless?" The emperor pulled Meng Yu closer and confessed, "I only want to do these things with the one I love." Each word was filled with affection, making her shyly turn her face away, but her heart was filled with sweetness. These words are truly memorable. GZ then slowly explained, "I don't touch the other concubines because I don't like any of them." He finished speaking and straightened up, adjusting his clothes. "If the person I like hasn't agreed, I will restrain myself." He also apologized for his rudeness. I apologized for offending the noble consort in order to prove my innocence. But she couldn't blame him. This subject was also rude. I shouldn't have doubted your majesty based on rumors. The next day, because the autumn hunt was approaching, they had to return to the palace. She hoped that after returning to the palace, those rumors would disappear. GZ was about to board the carriage when Roan Fei hurriedly ran over, panting, "Your Majesty." The emperor was startled to see her and remembered, "I almost forgot you were also at the imperial retreat." The more he thought about it, the more amused he became. She had clearly come with the Empress Dowager's decree, yet she hadn't done anything, making him completely forget her existence. Her face was as pale as a plum blossom. She awkwardly asked, "Truly?" When she first arrived, a little eunuch had whispered in her ear, "His Majesty likes the aloof type, like Consort Meng. Your ladyship should stay quietly at the imperial retreat and not be too proactive." She had been so easily fooled. Throughout the entire trip, the emperor hadn't even glanced at her, making her despair. Am I not aloof enough? Only now did she realize she had been tricked by that damned little eunuch. She hurriedly covered her mouth to hide her panic and explained, "The Empress Dowager ordered this lowly concubine to serve your majesty. I have been negligent these past few days. On the way back to the palace, I will definitely serve you well." Since she liked to play dumb, he played along. After returning to the palace, you will be confined for 10 days, and your authority to manage the 6 palaces will be revoked. Do you have any objections? Consort Roan felt utterly devastated by this sudden blow. Anyone could see she was just being polite, so why bully the weak like this? The emperor turned and saw Lu Shi being carried away on a stretcher. He was about to ask if riding a horse might be too much for Lord Lu, when GZ hopped into the carriage, feigning kindness by offering the injured Lord Lu a ride, then whipped the horses and sped off, leaving Consort Roan to choke on the dust. The court officials, informed of the emperor's imminent return, lined up neatly outside the palace gates to welcome him. However, when they heard the distant hoofbeats and looked up, their eyes nearly popped out of their heads. For they saw the emperor and noble consort Meng You leading the procession back to the palace on horseback. Panic ensued. His Majesty is returning on horseback. GZ, majestic and imposing, pulled on the reins, and his horse neighed once, obediently following his command. Some officials were so frightened they collapsed at the horse's hooves. Seeing this, the emperor sarcastically remarked, "As my ministers, you lose your composure before the imperial carriage. What kind of court officials are you?" Prince Ji Shu calmly stepped forward. He retorted, "Your Majesty has injured people while riding before. That is why they are so afraid." The emperor's patience wore thin. He sneered, "Uncle is right, but my riding skills have improved recently." He then looked meaningfully at Meng You. "What does noble consort think?" Seeing the emperor's intimate gesture, Ji Shu frowned, but his expression remained impassive. GZ stroked his mount and deliberately added fuel to the fire. "I practiced mounted archery to please noble consort, and it also allowed me to travel with her all the way." Even Meng Yu felt a bit awkward and chose to remain silent. After he finished speaking, Ji Shu sneered, "I heard your Majesty fell into the water at the summer palace." GZ replied casually, "It was a hot night. I just went for a swim. It has nothing to do with noble consort." This time, Ji Shu was somewhat annoyed. He lowered his voice. "Your Majesty is truly good at protecting his woman." GZ glanced at him and smiled. "Does Uncle really think I can't protect my woman?" Just as the tension between them escalated, a eunuch respectfully reported, "The autumn hunt tributes are ready. We hope your Majesty will uphold the nation's prestige." Ji Shu glared warningly at the eunuch and reminded the emperor in a condescending tone, "The Qi envoys will be watching the autumn hunt and presenting wild beasts. We hope your Majesty will not become a laughingstock like last time." Seeing the disdain in their eyes, GZ said firmly, "Don't worry. This time, I will make everyone understand that with me here, the Great Qin is not easily violated." They quickly packed Meng Yu's belongings and returned to the Hall of Mental Cultivation. While helping her tidy her clothes, GZ said, "After returning to the palace, I will speak to the Empress Dowager about restoring your title as Imperial Noble Consort." But Meng Yu refused. "That will only displease the Empress Dowager and invite criticism. Besides, this subject doesn't concern me." Unexpectedly, GZ was resolute this time. Forget about that old woman. I don't care what others say. The most important thing is to live comfortably. Meng You paused after hearing these words and murmured, "My ancestors also said such things." She bowed respectfully. "Then this subject will await your majesty's decree." Seeing her support, GZ was deeply moved, his cheeks flushing slightly. He embraced her and whispered, "Tomorrow's autumn hunt, you will accompany me." She chuckled softly. "Does your majesty lack confidence in his archery skills?" He replied tenderly, "No, I just want you by my side always." At this moment, the noble consort unhesitatingly reached out and wrapped her arms around his back. She held her husband tightly and replied, "Okay." Meng Yu walked briskly towards the Empress Dowager's palace. As the words "palace of tranquil longevity" came into view, Consort Rong's maid suddenly rushed over to report, "Your Majesty, my mistress has prepared wine and dishes. She invites your Majesty to grace her with your presence." He paused and pondered for a moment. Consort Rong was the Empress Dowager's person. He had taken the authority over the 6 palaces from her last time. Today, he should settle this matter completely to prevent her from causing trouble for noble consort in the future. With this thought, the emperor changed direction and headed towards Consort Rong's palace. Upon seeing the emperor, she joyfully greeted him. "Greetings, your majesty." He glanced coldly at the sumptuous dishes on the table and couldn't help but wonder, "I didn't inform anyone of my arrival. What is the meaning of preparing such a feast?" Consort Rong covered her smile with her fan. "This concubine prepares a sumptuous meal every day, just waiting for your majesty to come and enjoy it." She thought the emperor would be moved, but he simply turned his delicate teacup and said bluntly, "Then you are truly extravagant and wasteful. It seems I was right to take away your managerial authority." His words drained the color from her face, but she couldn't refute them. Previously, she had been summoned by the Empress Dowager and reprimanded. "I don't care what methods you use, if you still cannot consummate with the emperor." She frowned. "Your mother can just wait to fall out of favor." The Empress Dowager's trusted folk handed her a bottle of aphrodisiac, carefully instructing her, "The Empress Dowager wants an heir. If all else fails, it's better to use some methods." Consort Rong knelt beside the emperor, holding the wine bottle and pouring him a drink. "Your Majesty, this is a snow pear wine that this concubine brewed herself. Please, your Majesty, try it." Even as she offered the wine, a flustered expression crossed her face. Meng Yu, though holding the cup, turned to study her. Ripples spread across the surface of the wine in the cup. The moon climbed high in the sky, and only then did he return, breathing heavily. Jishu was casually reading a book and greeted him indifferently. "You're back." Unexpectedly, the emperor suddenly knelt at her feet, clinging tightly to her waist and acting coquettishly. Noble consort, she had never seen him like this before, and was stunned. The next moment, Meng Yu began to cry, his eyes brimming with tears as he complained, "Wu, noble consort, I can't leave you. The regent wants to harm me. He's not a good person. He's not sincere to you either. Don't go with him." Jishu still didn't understand what he was babbling about, but to soothe him, she gently patted his head and affirmed, "Your Majesty, I don't like the regent." Meng Yu smiled happily upon hearing this and held her even tighter. She awkwardly warned, "Don't push your luck." As soon as she finished speaking, he asked, "Then do you still want to see Jin Shao?" Jishu pretended to think before answering him, but he just clung to her feet, acting spoiled and unreasonable. Does he think he can fool this palace? She quickly pushed him away, demanding, "Your Majesty, let go of me first and tell me what's going on." He raised a hand and rubbed his forehead, replying, "I drank a little wine at Consort Rong's palace." While Meng Yu wasn't paying attention, he pulled her onto his lap and continued to act coquettishly. "Beloved consort, I'm so hot." Suspicion immediately arose in her heart. Could there have been an aphrodisiac in the wine? But the thought vanished instantly as his hand touched a sensitive spot. Her expression darkened, and a sharp slap rang out, accompanied by the noble consort's forceful reprimand. "How dare you feign drunkenness and act wantonly in front of this palace?" Her anger made him raise his hands in supplication. "I have a low tolerance for alcohol. I get drunk just from the smell. I was truly drunk just now, but I'm sober now." Just as things were getting chaotic, Attendant Chun entered and reported, "Consort Rong is kneeling outside the palace gates, refusing to leave. She says she requests an audience with your ladyship." The emperor flew into a rage at the mention of her name. If I hadn't noticed her strange behavior and had eunuch Zhang test the wine, I would have fallen for her scheme. I haven't even settled the score with her, and she dares to come to the noble consort. I'm going to demote her." Meng Yu then realized he had wrongly accused the noble consort, and quickly reached out to tug on her sleeve until he turned to look at her questioningly. She spoke softly, "Let me go see her." As soon as Consort Rong saw the noble consort emerge, she began to cry. "Your ladyship, this concubine knows that harming His Majesty's health is a capital offense. Although this concubine is a legitimate daughter, my father favors his concubines and neglects my mother. My maternal grandfather's clan has also gradually declined, and there's no one to support my mother. We, mother and daughter, can only rely on each other. The Empress Dowager threatened this concubine with my mother's life. This concubine truly had no other choice. I beg your ladyship for mercy." Meng Yu frowned slightly as she listened to Consort Rong's plight and calmly made an offer. "I can help you, even save your mother, and let you both escape far away. But the choice is yours." Jizai coldly interrupted her. "Beloved consort, why waste words with her? She is the Chu family's only eligible legitimate daughter. Kill her, and the Empress Dowager will have no recourse." The Emperor's every word pierced Consort Rong's heart like a dagger, leaving her panicked and trembling uncontrollably. She decided to reveal everything, clutching Meng Yu's skirt and pleading. "The Empress Dowager plans to wait until she can prove His Majesty has an unspeakable illness, then rightfully adopt a child from the royal family. Even if His Majesty doesn't have an illness, the Empress Dowager will find a way to make him contract one." Meng Yu lifted her chin. "You have no choice. Like the Empress Dowager, I also need pawns." She hesitated for a moment, closing her eyes tightly. As if making up her mind, she knelt and swore, "I am willing to be an inside agent. I beg your highness to plead with His Majesty to spare my life." Yesterday was sunny and bright, but today the entire capital city was covered in white snow. Meng Yu straightened the emperor's clothes and said, "Your Majesty, I would like an imperial edict to leave the palace to visit Lu Qi." He agreed without hesitation. She added, "Of course, it's mainly to see the regent. He will definitely come to see me when he hears I'm leaving the palace." Hearing this, the emperor wanted to question her. "What are you going to see him for? Isn't playing house with the regent enough? Do you want to ruin your reputation?" Ignoring Ji Zizi's protests, she calmly replied, "It's not like he's an ex-lover." Then she gently stroked his nose and coaxed, "All right, stop it. The Empress Dowager wants to frame you. After you contract an infectious disease, she will adopt an heir. I'm going to discuss with the regent how to use her own scheme against her. I'm just reaping the benefits." Meng Yu quickly arrived at the gate of Lu Ai's residence. Chun Shirley, who was waiting outside, immediately reported, "She's here." "Your Highness." Dressed in men's clothing, she stepped out of the carriage and reminded him, "Don't call me Your Highness, call me young master." He immediately corrected himself. Yes, young master." Unexpectedly, as soon as she entered the door, she bumped into Ji Shuang. He immediately questioned, "Zhao Yu, you specifically left the palace to see Lu Qi. When did you two become so close?" His eyes held a hint of reproach. "I've never seen you look at me differently." Meng Yu retorted sharply, "Brother Lu has helped me a lot, and his injury is also related to me. If you were dying, maybe I would go see you too." Seeing that he was given the cold shoulder, he changed the subject. "I didn't come to talk to you about this, but to see you." She remained indifferent. "I ask you, is Zhang Yaozhong, who deliberately approached the tyrant in the palace, someone you planted by the tyrant's side?" Ji Shuang frowned. "Zhang what? I don't know this person at all." She laughed sarcastically, pretending to dodge his touch. "If it's not you, could it be the Empress Dowager? Yesterday, Consort Rong told me that the Empress Dowager plans to adopt an heir from her relatives. She wants to harm the tyrant, so it's not impossible that she arranged for someone to monitor him." His eyes were full of doubt. "Is this true? Why would Consort Rong tell you?" She picked up a chess piece and played with it, explaining slowly, "Yesterday, she barged into my palace and begged me to save her, saying that the Empress Dowager was just using her and would discard her like worn-out shoes after she was done." The chess piece contrasted sharply against her fair skin. "The Empress Dowager has always wanted Consort Rong to give birth to an heir in order to keep her bloodline on the throne. By abandoning the mother and keeping the child, she would be able to rule from behind the curtain." Ji Shuang still couldn't fully believe it. "But Consort Rong has never given birth to a child, so the Empress Dowager is anxious. Maybe it's because your marital relationship with the tyrant is not good." She just laughed happily. "Perhaps you've heard that the tyrant has unspeakable problems in that area." Before he could react, she whispered in his ear, "Because he reacts to me. He slammed his hands on the table, shattering it, and swore like a madman, "One day, I will gouge out his eyes and chop off his hands." Blood flowed freely, dripping down his palms. She turned away indifferently, uncaring. "I'm not interested in crazy people. Please tell Brother Lu that I came by." Hearing her call Lu Shu Brother Lu twice, he couldn't help but snort. At this time, Lu Tawashing's subordinates were busy bandaging Ji Yuan's wounds, while Lu Tuona wanted to ask his opinion. The Empress Dowager wants to harm the Emperor, and the Emperor also has unspeakable problems. "What does your Highness plan to do?" He gritted his teeth and replied, his voice filled with killing intent. "Of course, I can't let her have her way." Just then, Meng You walked leisurely out of the residence. Chun surely was surprised to see her return so quickly, but still blurted out, "Your Highness, you have returned." She was about to answer when she suddenly saw a familiar face in the distance. Ji Qin approached, calling affectionately a you. His sudden appearance made her suspicious. It's not surprising that Ji Shuang knows I'm out of the palace, but how would Ji Qin, who should be in Dali Temple, know? He was about to pour out his heart when his gaze suddenly met Chen Shirley's, who looked exactly like him. His tone immediately changed, and he sneered. "It seems Her Majesty still remembers this lowly servant." She immediately ordered, "Chen Shirley, withdraw." "Yes." He began to plead. You came to see them today, but you're so cold to me. Have you forgotten our past and chosen that tyrant?" But having lived 2 lifetimes, she wouldn't be moved by these empty words. She went straight to the point. "What are you doing here? Tell me what you're afraid of." She crossed her arms, looking down at him. "Are you afraid of truly losing me, or are you afraid of something else?" At first, he looked somewhat guilty, cold sweat dripping down his cheeks, but after a few seconds, he scoffed. "I thought that as long as I did everything to make you happy, your heart would always belong to me. Honestly, I regret it now. If I had another chance, I would never let that tyrant take you away." As he spoke, he reached out to grab her hand. "I." She frowned unexpectedly, anger flashing in her eyes. "Don't touch me." She didn't forget to warn him. "I like smart people, but not traitors and rebels." "Minister Xia, please remember your place." Then, she angrily left him, casually ordering Chun Shirley back to the palace. As she turned to board the carriage, a hand reached out, surprising her. "Your Majesty, what are you doing here?" Ji Shuang replied gently, "Taking you home." She placed her hand in his without hesitation. Then she said happily, "The road home isn't lonely with someone by my side." Chen Shirley stood there, witnessing everything. Now he was enveloped in killing intent. "As long as you live, I won't have a peaceful night's sleep." Suddenly, he sneered, a cruel look in his eyes. "You won't live much longer anyway, Your Majesty." The next morning, the Great Qin was decorated with lanterns and colorful streamers. The officials below knelt respectfully, shouting, "Long live Your Majesty. 10,000 years. 10,000 years. 10,000 years." The emperor majestically commanded, "Rise." The officials immediately obeyed. "Thank you, Your Majesty." A eunuch's shrill voice rang out, announcing, "The Qi envoy has arrived." As soon as this news came out, the officials, who had just been solemn, began to wring their hands anxiously, muttering, "Sigh. It seems that our Great Qin will be humiliated again." Chen Shirley anxiously draped a cloak over Meng You, saying, "Your Majesty, it's windy. Be careful not to catch a cold." But Meng Yu was too worried about Ji Yuan and immediately asked, "Ji Yuan, do you think His Majesty can handle this?" He just chuckled in response, "Your Majesty, you're treating His Majesty like a child." She couldn't refute him. He continued, "But His Majesty is no longer a child. He is a man, an emperor." The Qi envoy walked in and bowed deeply, proclaiming, "Long live the Emperor of the Great Qin." Then, pointing to a cage covered with a red cloth, he said, "To celebrate the smooth progress of the autumn sacrifice ceremony, our country offers a precious treasure." The red cloth was lifted, revealing an ugly, bald bird. Its blood-red eyes looked somewhat unsettling. He asked the surrounding officials, "Do any of you know what this is?" They only wanted to avoid the question, murmuring, "We don't know. We've never seen it before." Hearing this, he stroked his beard smugly, his tone full of contempt. I thought it would be difficult for you. After all, the Qi kingdom is rich in resources. How could you possibly know?" This statement immediately angered the officials. This dog, doesn't he know whose territory he's standing on? The emperor spoke, his voice laced with disdain. a goose feather gifted from 1,000 miles away. Such a thoughtful gift. Since your emperor insists on presenting this ugly gray bird, I will reluctantly accept it. Hearing this, he gritted his teeth, burning with rage. How dare you mock our divine eagle? The officials, however, were secretly delighted, whispering His Majesty's retort was brilliant. He turned to look at the wobbly cage, quickly regaining his arrogant demeanor. Be smug now. You'll be crying later. The cage began to shake violently. Sure enough, the next second, the ugly bird broke out of the cage and rushed out. The officials below were in chaos. Heavens, it's broken out of the cage and is flying. Strangely, it didn't fly away but swooped down, its claws grabbing an unlucky official. He flailed his arms wildly, screaming, "Let go of me." Eunuch Zeng also hurriedly ordered the soldiers, "Protect His Majesty. Protect the Emperor." It seemed the Emperor had anticipated this, as he didn't even blink. Even Meng You panicked, shouting worriedly, "Your Majesty." Suddenly, someone placed a hand on her shoulder. She jumped, turning around and asking in confusion, "What are you doing here?" But Ji Shuang remained silent, not saying a word. While the others scurried around like headless chickens, Ji Yuan calmly picked up his prepared bow. As he drew the string, he couldn't help but scoff. Such an unsightly bird, always creating such a dramatic scene. He focused intently, aiming at his target as the bird soared through the air. It charged straight towards him. The arrow was knocked, waiting for the perfect moment. With impeccable timing, the arrow flew, striking the ugly bird squarely in the neck. The Emperor's archery stunned everyone, from the ministers who couldn't believe his accuracy to the dumbfounded Qi envoy. Wasn't the Qin Emperor supposed to be useless? How could he be so skilled? Looking down at the chaotic scene, he said somewhat sheepishly, "It's just a bird. You're all so frightened. You embarrass me." This beast was disrespectful, nearly ruining my birthday feast. But it's not entirely its fault. After all, a beast is just a beast. His tone then sharpened. The blame lies with the fool who didn't lock the cage properly, letting the beast run loose. Envoy, wouldn't you agree? The Qi envoy, dripping with cold sweat, nervously replied, "Yes, Your Majesty is right." The Emperor gave him a warning glance. "Envoy, you may return. I'm not in the mood today. Tomorrow, I invite you to hunt with me." He then added, with a wave of his hand, "Pluck this beast and give each official a feather to take home and hang, so they may remember today's unsightly display." The officials respectfully took their leave. "We take our leave. Your Majesty." Meng You was being stopped from leaving the reed bridge by the regent. Seeing this, the Emperor approached and said sarcastically, "I thought I was mistaken when I saw Imperial Uncle speaking with my beloved consort on the hunting grounds." Seeing him appear, she immediately called out, "Your Majesty." He maintained his disdainful smile, looking at the person who wanted to interject. So it really was Imperial Uncle. With his arms crossed and a mocking smile, the Emperor looked at the regent. "I thought I was mistaken when I saw Imperial Uncle speaking with a noble consort on the hunting grounds." Meng Yu smiled and said, "Your Majesty was so majestic before the envoy, yet you still pay attention to such small matters concerning this concubine." Ji Yuan scratched his head sheepishly and hummed in agreement. She hummed a cheerful tune, a smile playing on her lips. Ji Shuang naturally didn't miss a single expression on her face. Only then did he coldly bow, "Your Majesty." But the Emperor stepped directly on the hem of his robe. He walked over, put his arm around her shoulders, and said haughtily in the noble consort. Ji Shuang silently stared directly into the Emperor's eyes, who stared back without flinching. Finally, he bowed his head, but not without a barbed remark. This official has always remembered that the noble consort was brought back by force. This official greets the noble consort. He looked at her tenderly, but his voice was laced with warning. "Since Imperial Uncle has paid his respects, perhaps he should remember that I share a bed with a noble consort every night. She is mine." With that, the Emperor led her away, leaving the regent standing alone. Watching this scene, Ji Shuang couldn't help but sneer. He lowered his eyes, his gaze unreadable. "A mere puppet in the palm of my hand, daring to bare its fangs at me." After they had walked some distance, Meng Yu slowly explained, "The regent probably knew the Qi envoy would try something, and fearing I would intervene, he came to stop me. He also said he wanted me to see Your Majesty's incompetence." Ji Yuan angrily punched a tree trunk. "We already guessed that, so we deliberately said those things to provoke him." But she smoothed things over. "Actually, when that strange bird flew toward your majesty, I really wanted to rush forward and save you. But after being stopped by him, I realized I shouldn't treat your majesty like a child. She turned and continued, Your majesty is a man, and I should give you enough trust. The way you handled the envoy just now truly impressed me. The more she spoke, the more he blushed. He even scratched his head shyly, unable to meet her eyes. He asked tentatively, Weren't you worried I wouldn't handle it well and lose face in court? But she encouraged him. What's losing face? I believe in you, your majesty. You will use this as a stepping stone and work even harder. He replied, touched, I've always hoped you would believe in me. Hearing you say that makes me truly happy. She responded happily, I'm also happy that your majesty trusts me. He began to reminisce. I never understood why my own brothers would resort to fratricide for the throne. It wasn't until I truly ascended that I finally understood. Born into the imperial family, whether you want to fight or not, it's not your decision. The emperor gently took her hand, placing it over his heart, and whispered, as the ruler of a nation, only power can protect the ones I love. I only wish the winds can cover all of this, leaving only the radiant fate that entangles you and I. My concubine, I will never fail you. Who would have thought, after such heartfelt words, the concubine would ask such a mood-killing question? Your Majesty, can you write poetry? It deflated him instantly. He roared internally. Does that even matter? I practically racked my brains to say those things. Then she laughed, changing the subject. Actually, none of that matters. What matters is that your Majesty needs to find an opportunity to recall my elder brother back to the capital. He couldn't help but ponder. The concubine's elder brother is also my brother-in-law. Recalling him to the capital to win over people is indeed necessary. Seeing him lost in thought, she lightly flicked his forehead. After your Majesty has shed the image of a foolish emperor, you still need to rally the court officials and regain military power. My elder brother is a crucial figure. He grumbled reluctantly. Well, he is my brother-in-law. Tugging at his sleeve, she urged, at tomorrow's hunt, your Majesty must perform well and impress everyone. All right, but we need to prepare something special. The next day, before the hunt began, the murmuring ministers were displeased to see the concubine riding behind the emperor, constantly trying to stop her. This is improper. This violates the rights. The emperor retorted nonchalantly, You were all so useless yesterday, nearly burying yourselves alive. You have the nerve to lecture me about rights. Shut up. As soon as these two words were uttered, silence fell upon the surroundings. Their mouths seemed glued shut, no longer daring to utter a sound. The emperor then commanded, Since everyone is here, let's depart. With that, he galloped off. Leading the charge at the front, Lu Tuoshing suddenly stopped him, pointing to the side and saying, Your Majesty, I have arranged men along this route and can guarantee your Majesty's safety. Please proceed this way. Ji Yuan, without suspicion, immediately turned his horse, smiling at Meng You and promising, My concubine, today I will hunt you a large beast. Lu Tuoshing watched their retreating figures as they followed his indicated direction, then reported to the regent, Your Highness, everything is arranged. The four rode deeper into the hunting grounds. Until the two exchanged a glance, suspicion arose in both their minds. She finally spoke, Although this path isn't known for large game, it's strange that we haven't even seen a single animal after riding for so long. Meng Yu and Ji Yuan exchanged glances and said in unison, Although there aren't any large animals on this path, it's very strange that we haven't even seen any small animals after riding for so long. Your Majesty's performance yesterday was outstanding, shooting down that strange bird in public. Perhaps the regent is afraid of being outdone in archery, so he had Lu Tuoshing clear out the game in advance. The emperor looked back, beginning to strategize. We must shake off the embroidered uniform guard surveillance and leave this path. He didn't forget to turn back and instruct eunuch Zeng and attendant Zhang. Don't follow us for a while. Help intercept the embroidered uniform guard. The two immediately bowed as you command. His words had barely left his mouth when the emperor and the concubine spurred their horses and galloped away, while the two, attendant Zhang and eunuch Zeng, wore strange smiles as they blocked the embroidered uniform guard. Seeing this, Lu Tuoshing hastily ordered his men quickly catch up to his Majesty. Attendant Zhang and eunuch Zeng exchanged a look. Eunuch Zeng slapped his horse's rump, causing it to bolt around wildly, yelling, Oh dear, my horse is out of control. Attendant Zhang was not to be outdone, pulling tightly on the reins to make his horse spin. Mine too. A large group of people were in chaos, like cockroaches in a frying pan. The horses couldn't break through, and the men could only stare blankly, not knowing what to do. Even the emperor and concubine were amazed when they looked back and saw this scene. Incredible. They hadn't gone far when they saw a deer leisurely drinking water by the stream. Ji Yuan said happily, "Sure enough, as soon as we left that path, there's game." He turned and saw Meng You drawing her bow. "Your Majesty shot down a bird yesterday, and if I hunt a beast for you today, it will surely win over the people's hearts." But the emperor immediately stopped her. "No need." He firmly drew his bowstring. "I will convince the ministers with my own skill." The deer was leisurely drinking water. Suddenly hearing a sound, it startled and looked up, fleeing like the wind. Meng You suddenly sensed something was wrong. An arrow suddenly whizzed towards them. She hurriedly shielded him with her body. "Your Majesty, be careful." "Ah!" Ji Yuan cried out in anguish as he saw the arrow pierce her chest. "My concubine." She even teased him, "It hurts more for me than you." Thankfully, he's not dead. Arrows rained down. It was truly unfortunate. At this moment, the concubine, enduring the pain, said, "The person who least wants your Majesty assassinated is Regent Ji Shuang. Find Lu Tuoshing. He will protect us. He promised me we would be all right. I've seen countless assassinations like this. I may not be good at other things, but I'm quite skilled at escaping." Shi Chun watched all of this and couldn't help but complain, "Meng You, why did you protect that person?" The subordinate behind him quickly reminded, "Master, if you keep worrying about the concubine, they might escape." Shi Chun, irritated by his subordinate's reminder, muttered to himself, "If it weren't for that tyrant, she wouldn't be injured." He waved his hand and ordered, "Forget about her. I must see that tyrant riddled with arrows, leaving no corpse behind." Having received their master's command, the rain of arrows intensified. To make matters worse, some assassins broke off and directly confronted them. Ji Yuan pursed his lips, staring at the crowd before him. The situation was truly jiishgu. Meng You gripped the arrow embedded in her body. Ji Yuan whispered in her ear, "Lu Tuoshing is on his way. Concubine, control the carriage. I'll hold them off with arrows. We'll wait for Lu Tuoshing together." She replied without hesitation, "All right." The assassins shouted kill to bolster their courage, but immediately following, the Imperial Guard arrived. Lu Tuoshing threw his sword, shouting, "Your Majesty." The long sword plunged into the ground before the assassins. What an entrance! One assassin, seeing the insignia on the sword, hurriedly reported, "It's the Imperial Guard. Retreat." Lu Tuoshing and his men bowed respectfully. "We are late, Your Majesty. Please forgive us." Despite her excruciating pain, Meng You gently said, "Brother Lu has rendered meritorious service in protecting His Majesty. What is there to forgive?" As soon as she finished speaking, she fainted amidst the shocked cries of Concubine. In stark contrast to the beautiful twilight, Ji Yuan frantically held the unconscious Concubine, completely abandoning his imperial composure, and yelled, "Imperial Physician." Quickly summoned the Imperial Physician. He gently laid her on the bed, looking heartbrokenly at the wound that had already darkened. How could this be? The wound looks poisoned. He wanted to help her, but felt powerless. Finally, he could only hold her hand and whisper, "It is all my fault, my incompetence, that caused the concubine to be injured. I would rather be injured myself than see her suffer even the slightest harm, but I am powerless, only able to watch her in pain." The emperor's tears streamed down his face. "Concubine, you cannot leave me. If I lose you, I." His tears dripped onto the ground. Just as she spoke, comforting him, "Your Majesty, I'm all right." The emperor was startled to see her awake. "How are you?" She forced a smile through the pain and explained, "Your Majesty, do not worry. When I prepared the protective armor, I also prepared some herbs. Applied to the wound, it looks like poison, but it's not serious." Seeing her trying to appear strong in front of him, Ji Yuan couldn't help but feel angry. He embraced her and whispered, "Even with armor, being hit by an arrow must have been very painful. I shouldn't have agreed to let you take such a risk." Then she revealed her thoughts. "The court officials all respect my elder brother, and my elder brother is extremely loyal to the Great Qin, so the regent doesn't want to see him return to the capital. This incident gives him a legitimate reason to return." Ji Shuang's hurried footsteps intertwined with with the eunuch's announcement from outside. The regent has arrived. The imperial physician has arrived. As soon as he entered, he bowed respectfully, his face full of worry and panic, completely different from his usual demeanor. Your subject greets your majesty. I heard that your majesty and the empress were attacked, so I rushed here immediately. He turned and rebuked the imperial physician behind him. Why haven't you treated the noble consort yet? Startled, the imperial physician stammered, Yes, yes, yes. He took her pulse for a long time before daring to give his diagnosis. The noble consort's wound is not fatal, but I cannot identify the poison in it. Ji Shuang's killing intent surged upon hearing this. He grabbed the imperial physician's collar and warned, if anything happens to the noble consort, you will be held responsible. At that moment, Meng You stirred and woke up. The imperial physician, seeing an opportunity to save himself, quickly spoke. The noble consort is awake. Hearing her voice, Ji Shuang immediately rushed to her side and softly called you. But the emperor was faster. He took her hand and asked, Noble consort, how are you feeling? Although she was not seriously injured, she still feigned weakness and replied, I heard what the imperial physician said. It seems my time is running out. Ji Shuang was taken aback, then took a pill from his sleeve. The imperial physician exclaimed in surprise, Isn't that the universal antidote pill? He leaned closer to the regent king and whispered, Your Highness, the universal antidote pill is extremely difficult to refine. You only have 2 left, and you gave one to the noble consort. Ji Shuang glared at him, but his gloomy expression didn't stop the imperial physician from continuing to chatter. Although it could detoxify any poison, we don't even know what kind of poison she's been afflicted with. This time, the regent king lost his patience and roared, Get out. He took out the pill and hurriedly offered it to Meng You. Take it quickly. You'll be fine after you take it. Looking at the pill, Meng You sighed inwardly. I thought his feelings for Meng You were fake, but it seems they are real. She took the pill and brought it to her lips. But before she could swallow it, she coughed up a mouthful of blood. Both Ji Shuang and Ji Yuan frantically called out to her, but she just kept coughing. Taking advantage of this opportunity, she said to the emperor, My only wish now is to see my elder brother. The emperor immediately agreed. All right, I promise you. I'll summon him back to the capital. Don't think too much. Thank you, your majesty. Lu Tuoshing was startled by the noble consort's request and hurriedly tried to stop the regent king. To his surprise, Ji Shuang agreed. Noble consort Shun saved his majesty's life. Summoning Minister Meng back to the capital is only right. I'll make the arrangements. Meng You smiled wryly. After coughing up blood, I feel much better. I want to rest. The emperor tucked her in and comforted her, then rest well. By the time you feel better, perhaps your cousin will have already returned to the capital. Seeing that it was getting late, the regent king said, Then I shall take my leave. After they all left her tent, she sat up happily and instructed the eunuch beside her, Eunuch Zeng, find a porcelain bottle to store this pill. In the night sky, a bright moon hung high, and the mysterious stars twinkled. Lu Tuoshing knelt outside and reported to his master. The assassins all wore black masks. They retreated in an orderly fashion as soon as we arrived. The regent king fell into deep thought. Then he commented, It seems these assassins are very cautious. The Empress Dowager didn't want to kill the emperor, and neither did I. Then who could it be? Shen Chun stood on a hidden cliff, his subordinates behind him apologizing. Your Highness, we missed the chance for revenge. We deserve to die. But Shen wasn't angry. He just chuckled. I originally wanted to use this opportunity to eliminate the tyrant, but Meng Yu used it to get the regent king to agree to summon her brother back to the capital. She's truly remarkable. Ji Yuan suddenly barged into Meng Yu's room while she was resting. Startled awake, she gently approached him and asked with concern, Did the ministers summon your majesty to discuss the continuation of the autumn hunt? He said angrily, They said that every time I'm assassinated, I get scared and stay in bed for over a month, neglecting state affairs. They're basically calling me a coward. The minister, disregarding the emperor's increasingly grim expression, even boldly asked, Should I publicly suggest returning to the palace this time, lest we lose face in front of the Qi envoys? He vented his anger in front of his beloved noble consort. They're urging me to leave because they're afraid of taking responsibility if something happens. They're all just looking out for themselves. Meng Yu simply smiled and asked, Then what does your majesty think? The emperor calmly replied, I want to stay. If I leave, they'll think I'm a coward, afraid every time there's an assassination attempt. But these past few nights, I've been dreaming of you getting hurt, he said. Meng Yu noticed his hands trembling and placed her hand over his to comfort him. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. I'm truly afraid of losing you. Meng Yu reminded him, Your Majesty needn't worry about me. Your Majesty is intelligent and brave. Only by demonstrating your imperial capabilities can you gain recognition. That is what Your Majesty needs most right now. After hearing Meng Yu's words, the emperor seemed to have a realization. His eyes lit up, and he immediately asked for her promise. Then I'll continue the hunt. You stay here and recover. All right. She was slightly startled at first, then smiled and agreed. All right. She couldn't help but find it amusing. It seemed he wanted to earn respect through his own abilities, and was also wary of her disguising herself as a man to sneak into the army and follow him. She gently stroked his hair. If Your Majesty wakes up in the middle of the night, remember, I am the king's woman. I can protect myself. Ji Yuan was taken aback by her words, frowning and acting coquettishly. Why does it feel like I'm being lectured by an elder? She asked blankly, Is it? Of course it is. You felt a little wronged. You're 3 years older than me, Meng Yu. They say a woman 3 years older brings gold, but your gold is pressing down on my shoulders, as if I'm 30 years younger than you. He carefully tucked her in. Don't worry, I will continue to make myself stronger. Soon you'll see me in a new light. Suddenly, he leaned close to her ear and whispered, When that time comes, I'll switch from defense to offense. He then sat up straight and carefully instructed, Rest well. I'm going to address the ministers. The autumn hunt continues. After the emperor left, Meng Yu sat up abruptly. Her cheeks flushed crimson. She touched her face and thought, Why is my face so hot? The ministers below, upon hearing the decision, had some doubts, continuing the autumn hunt. Is His Majesty too afraid? But the emperor simply explained, During the last hunt, a single ugly bird caused the Qin ministers to lose face. If we return to the palace because of a minor assassination attempt, wouldn't that make the Qi envoys think Qin is useless? The ministers below were nearly moved to tears. Finally, His Majesty understood the importance of saving face. They immediately bowed and said, Your Majesty is wise. Seeing this scene, the regent thought, These people think the puppet emperor has finally come to his senses. He certainly wouldn't let him succeed so easily. So he suggested, The autumn hunt is just for good luck. His Majesty's safety is more important. I suggest we all hunt together. He smiled smugly. This way, under everyone's watchful eyes, Meng Yu wouldn't be able to help the tyrant do as he pleased, and the ministers would also discover that he was just lucky when he shot that bird. The same deer by the stream was leisurely drinking water when it heard the commotion. It quickly ran away. Even Ji Yuan, who was aiming, closed his eyes impatiently, then angrily shouted at the noisy people behind him, You're protecting me so loudly that the prey has run away. What am I supposed to shoot? I might as well shoot your heads. Ji Shuang sighed helplessly. Your Majesty seems to have forgotten about the assassination attempt. You can't act recklessly. He deliberately glanced back as a reminder. Your Majesty, swords and arrows have no eyes. I will withdraw when the time is right. The emperor chuckled and ordered, Imperial uncle, we are not being reckless. We're just asking you to step back a bit so you don't scare away the prey. Besides, we have Lord Luo here. The regent was unable to refute. Ji Yuan didn't forget to remind the soldiers behind him, Follow us and pick up the prey we shoot, understand? The soldiers behind him answered in unison, Understood. Then the emperor led the way on horseback. The Qi envoy thought smugly, My mission to Qin will not only humiliate the king of Qin, but also please His Majesty. My reputation will soar, and I will surely be richly rewarded. I fought tooth and nail for this assignment. I hope the king of Qin doesn't disappoint me. No one expected that the soldier carrying the flag in front was actually the noble consort in disguise. In her heart, she silently cheered for him. Your Majesty, I hope you succeed. The sunlight was bright in the forest. A deer appeared before them, its head held high. His Majesty, Meng Yu raised his bow. Just as he was about to aim, his eyes widened. It was a rare white deer. When the people behind him caught up, from the ministers to Luo Sun and even Regent Ji Shuang, everyone was too astonished to speak. Even Shinzili, a veteran official who had served 2 emperors, was stunned, reminded of the white deer Jin Xiang from years past. She recalled the scene of her and the late emperor naming the white deer together. His Majesty's expression at the time clearly showed his dislike for the name Little White. So I said, Then let's call it Jin Xiang. The late emperor gently replied, whatever EU says is fine. One of the ministers spoke before the ancestral founding emperor's coronation ceremony. He personally tamed an iron cavalry and captured a white deer alive, raising it in the palace to usher in good fortune for Qin. After so many years, the reappearance of a white deer is an auspicious sign. Could it be that our great Qin is about to undergo a transformation? Regent Ji Shuang thought reluctantly. The white deer, a symbol of good fortune, actually appeared before the tyrant. Yao Zong took 4 arrows from his quiver and knocked them on his bow, aiming. Seeing him prepare to shoot 4 arrows at once, Luo Sun anxiously asked Ji Shuang, does His Majesty intend to capture this deer alive by surrounding it with 4 arrows? The regent softly replied, perhaps, if it were a fawn. He sneered, but this deer is so large. With His Majesty's archery skills, I'm afraid it will be difficult to succeed. As the crowd murmured, the emperor continued to aim steadily. Shinzili was also extremely worried, thinking, if His Majesty can capture this auspicious white deer alive, perhaps he can wash away the infamy of being a tyrant. So she took out the silver needles she had prepared beforehand, thinking, even if he doesn't want my help, I can't let him fail in this particular situation. She waited for him to shoot, the 4 arrows flying out in unison. She simultaneously launched her hidden weapon, and while the regent's faction was unaware, the silver needle struck the white deer's neck, preventing its escape. The next moment, the 4 arrows hit their mark, and the white deer was unable to flee. The officials cheered. His Majesty has captured the auspicious omen alive. The emperor calmly dismounted and turned to sarcastically address the regent. Thank you, imperial uncle. I shall accept this auspicious omen. Although Ji Shuang was resentful, he had to feign delight. This is your Majesty's great fortune. As Ji Yuan approached to stroke the white deer, he suddenly felt a silver needle in its hide and realized with astonishment that someone had helped. He quickly looked back at the soldiers behind him, thinking, so it was the noble consort who secretly helped. The emperor then pulled out the arrows lodged in front of the auspicious beast. He raised the arrows and addressed the civil and military officials and guards. Heaven has favored us. This white beast is an auspicious omen. I merely blocked its path with 4 arrows, and it actually stopped for me. This is the will of heaven. He held the arrows to his chest. I am deeply ashamed. Looking back, my tyranny has outweighed my benevolence. I am truly ashamed. I am determined to correct my past mistakes and become a benevolent and merciful ruler. I will keep this auspicious omen in the palace to remind myself to reform. The officials were shocked. The tyrant actually admitted his faults in public, and his words were sincere. The emperor gently stroked the auspicious beast, and it did not resist, docilely allowing the tyrant to touch it. The officials were moved to tears. Everyone knelt and shouted, His Majesty is benevolent. His Majesty is wise. Ji Yuan smiled with joy. Even consort Rome smiled. The emperor said, rise. I am overjoyed to have obtained this auspicious omen and do not wish to kill any more. The autumn hunt ends here. Prepare to return to the palace. The carriage carrying the auspicious omen slowly moved forward, and the emperor led everyone back to the palace. Consort Rome, who was behind, noticed a suspicious soldier. Seeing him draw a weapon, she shouted, Your Majesty, be careful. Ji Yuan had just turned his head when he was startled to see a person dressed as a guard rushing towards him with a dagger. Suddenly, a long whip wrapped around the assassin's wrist and tightened. It was Consort Rome who had acted preemptively, averting the crisis. Despite her best efforts to pull, the assassin still gripped the weapon tightly. He plunged the dagger directly into the emperor's chest armor.